Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku. Back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku in Class 1A reacted to the multiverse? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Midoriya woke up expecting to be in his bed in his dorm at UA. Instead, he found himself in a chair in a cinema, surrounded by his classmates from 1A and 1B, along with his teachers and other pro-heroes and villains. A loud noise startled everyone awake, and it was clear they were all as confused as Midoriya. The chaos erupted with questions and complaints about their situation. Amidst the confusion, a voice broke through. "Hey!" Everyone turned to see a kid, probably a year or two older than the students, standing before them. The room fell silent, all eyes on the newcomer. "Hello, young lady. May I ask where we are?" All Might inquired. "Oh right, my boss transported all of us here to react to your multiverse. It's hard to believe, I know, but trust me, it's best to just sit down and watch the screen. I'm here to provide any information about the universe I'm allowed to share, and as a bonus, all your quirks are nullified in this room until we're done," the kid explained swiftly as if rehearsed. Shigaraki approached, skepticism evident in his demeanor. "And why should we trust you and this boss of yours?" he asked, holding his hand with a pinky raised, which made the heroes tense up, though the kid remained unfazed. "Honestly, I don't know why they do this, but I can't argue against them, so here I am," Danny replied nonchalantly. Shigaraki attempted to use his quirk on them, but nothing happened, leaving him shocked while the heroes relaxed, realizing the truth of the situation. "Why are we reacting to the multiverse anyway?" Momo asked. "I think it's just to see how your lives are in different worlds. We might also get to see the future and alternate timelines, which are basically what would have happened if someone made different choices. Oh, and a lot of it revolves around Midoriya, Bakugo, Todoroki, and the pros and villains for some reason," Danny explained. "Then why are we here?" Monoma exclaimed, gesturing to his class. He was not keen on being forced to watch some students from 1A. Danny shrugged. "I already said I don't know," they replied casually. The majority of the group nodded, now intrigued by what they might see. Midoriya took out a new notebook, and his classmates prepared for him to start taking notes. After a moment, everyone settled down, with the heroes ensuring a seat distance from the villains, who chose to sit together. Surprisingly, the atmosphere was smoother than expected. "Oh, I forgot to mention, if you want any snacks, just think about it, and it should appear in your lap, though there is a limit," Danny said as they took a seat between Bakugo and Shigaraki, bridging the gap between heroes and villains. "You know, you never gave us a name." "It's the least you could do," Eraserhead remarked. "Right, sorry. I'm Danny," they introduced themselves. Bakugo made a dismissive sound, and Danny rolled their eyes at him, which only fueled his irritation. Before he could react further, they pulled out a piece of paper and grinned. "Okay, first universe. The Music Meister," Danny announced with a clap as the screen began to load. "In this universe, quirks don't exist, but there are a select few who have powers due to some circumstances," they explained while most nodded in understanding. The scene opened with 6 individuals preparing for a confrontation. Shirakumo, a human-looking gang orca, and Ms. Joke faced off against Magna, Overhaul, and Kai. "Magna!" Twice murmured, still feeling guilty for her demise. Toga glared at the on-screen Overhaul, while Shigaraki turned to Twice, reassuring him that it wasn't his fault and that no one blamed him. Twice nodded in response. The rooftop duo and Midnight were wide-eyed and teary at the sight of Shirakumo. They exchanged glances, quickly adjusting to the emotions, happy to see their friend again. "This universe really is different," All Might observed. "Of course it would be. What did you expect?" Aizawa replied bluntly, causing All Might to smile sheepishly. Many in the audience noted that they had never seen that hero before, referring to Oboro. "I'm not going to get used to seeing Orca as a human," Present Mike remarked, repeatedly adjusting his glasses. "It sounds to me that it's time to rumble," Shirakumo declared, preparing his arrows. "Indeed, but it is you who will take the tumble," Kai sang. "I'm sorry, but did you just sing that?" someone asked. Did he just sing that? Jiro questioned in sync with joke. Of course I did not. Wait, yes I did. I'm sounding shrill against my will and cannot stop this singing, Kai responded. And in my ears, I swear I hear a quite distinctive ringing, Gang Orca added. This must be the doing of someone's quirk, Midoriya analyzed, only to be corrected by Kirishima. Midobro, remember they don't have quirks here. Yeah, Deku, I think you meant power, Uraraka agreed, casually placing a hand on his shoulder, causing him to turn red as he frantically nodded in agreement. This silly game is really lame, and someone's going to pay, Magna sang, stepping forward. An unknown force, but where's the source that has us in its sway? Joke wondered. Who is doing this to us? And on this, we must conquer, Overhaul proclaimed. The dastardly, despicable, disturbingly inexplicable, and eminently kickable. They sang about a dirty rotten rat, revealing the music meister. The camera shifted to a brown-haired man dressed in a large dark trench coat. Mr. Compress shouted, causing shock among many, including the League, as they had never seen his face before. Toga and Twice squealed while shaking their friend, and the rest of the League grew more intrigued. The music meister commanded them to lower their weapons, and they complied, beginning to dance instead. He proclaimed that their resistance to his charm would end as he belted out powerful chords. Shigaraki and Midoriya noted simultaneously that he could control people through his singing. Jiro commented on the great power, though many students from Class 1 agreed, except for Minoma, who was enthusiastically enjoying the performance like a theater nerd. The music meister continued, stating that it didn't matter if they were good or bad, they were all slaves to his hypnotic patterns. He made them waltz with one another and pointed out that his power resembled Shinsu's, which caused Shinso to look down, feeling uncomfortable being compared to a villain. As he regaled them with his story, he claimed they had no choice but to follow his evil bidding when they heard his booming voice. The others sang backup as he performed an elaborate routine, using his followers as steps to descend in style. Dabi sarcastically remarked on how the Meister still acted like a big-shot showman, to which Compress dramatically replied that it was just who he was. Shigaraki imagined the possibilities of having someone with such a quirk join them, while the heroes felt relieved that they wouldn't have to deal with anyone like him. Minoma, however, envied the performers on screen, dreaming of being in a real-life musical, which Kendo chose to ignore. The music meister declared it was his destiny to be the maestro of villainy and pressed buttons on a computer before dancing out of the building. Meanwhile, a hero in a bat-themed costume watched from the sky through binoculars, commenting on the unusual scene. All for one whispered, curious about the score the meister intended to settle. Mina recognized the voice, and Class 1A collectively realized it belonged to Aizawa. The music meister recounted how he had been bullied for singing in choir, but when he sang higher, the bullies fell into a trance, allowing him to make them dance. Bakugu exclaimed that it was a terrible reason to bully someone, prompting a quiet response from Danny, who Bakugu quickly turned to with surprise. The villains cheered for Compress on screen, with Shigaraki being the loudest. The music meister continued his performance, and Ms. Joke showcased her impressive vocal talent, which amazed Denki and many others. As they sang, Joke activated her power, creating a force that sent the meister and everyone around her flying back. Bakugu inquired about Joke's superpower, and Danny explained that in this universe, she could create ultrasonic vibrations with her screams, known as the Canary Cry. Midoriya excitedly noted how effective that ability would be in combat, but Bakugu interrupted him, telling him to be quiet. Aizawa explained the danger of the music meister's voice, which could hypnotically control anyone who heard it. Aizawa's presence surprised Zero, who noted the bat-shaped earplugs he wore. Endeavor questioned why they couldn't get a more competent hero to help, earning him multiple glares, including one from Shigaraki, who was then silenced by Shoto and Dabi. The music meister looked up to see Aizawa standing in front of him, declaring that the concerto of crime was over. The meister responded that his work was not done yet and attempted to blast Aizawa with a beam from his cane, which Aizawa dodged. The meister smirked, continuing his performance even as Batman engaged with the entranced crowd. As the music meister sang, he commanded his followers to show Batman how well they could dance, laughing wickedly. Batman let him escape to deal with the others, fighting against those still under the Meister's spell. The scene shifted back to the Music Meister, who pressed an unknown button that initiated a countdown, leaving everyone in suspense. "Did Aizawa-sensei win?" Kendo exclaimed. Danny reassured everyone that they would revisit the DC universe multiple times, and she was certain that a few would let them see what happened next. All for One inquired if different universes had names, and although a shiver ran up Danny's spine, she answered him. Yes, she confirmed, and they needed to move on to the next universe. She felt a sense of repulsion talking to him, but it was something she had to endure until they finished this. Hopefully, nothing would be added to prolong their task. The next universe was called Bakugo and Second, and their eyes lit up with excitement as they read the title. Second? Bakugo protested, insisting he should be with First. Denki interjected, suggesting that it wasn't about positions. Jiro feigned shock at Denki's surprisingly smart comment, teasing him. Mineta smirked and asked what positions they were discussing, but Mina quickly threatened him with her quirk, knowing he feared her. She exchanged a knowing glance with Zero, who nodded in agreement, ready to intervene if Mineta slipped up again. Midoriya and All Might, in a moment of word association, thought of One for All, but it was the older hero who had reservations while Midoriya brushed it off. Danny clapped her hands, signaling the next scene. Katsuki was walking to his dorm room when he was stopped by Kirishima and Kaminari, both out of breath from chasing him. They placed a hand on his shoulder to steady themselves. Katsuki asked what they wanted, and after catching their breath, Kirishima suggested they hang out in Kaminari's room to play video games. Kaminari added that he had the new All Might Texas Smash game and wanted to try it out. Katsuki dismissed them, claiming he was busy. Kaminari teased that Katsuki was scared of losing a silly game, which nearly provoked an explosive reaction from him. The two boys took the hint and left, but Kirishima mentioned he could still drop by whenever Katsuki was free. Ida observed that this universe seemed very similar to theirs. Danny explained that it was more of an alternate reality set in the future, so there was a small chance something similar could happen to them. Hawks kept an eye out for anything interesting that might occur in their reality. When Katsuki opened the door, he was startled to see a stranger sitting on his bed, looking around the room. There were no creases on the bed, indicating nothing of significant weight had been there. The stranger had spiky hair similar to Katsuki's, but it was brown, and he bore a large scar diagonally across his face. Many in the audience reacted with shock, mirroring Bakugo's expression on screen. Katsuki pointed at the stranger and demanded to know who he was. The stranger bore a striking resemblance to Katsuki, prompting Momo to suggest he might be related. Ojiro asked if he was Katsuki's father or uncle, to which Katsuki vehemently denied. Hawks, with a teasing smile, remarked on the uncanny resemblance, further aggravating Katsuki. Katsuki confronted the stranger, adopting a fighting stance. The stranger stood up and approached him, stating they needed to talk. Katsuki noticed the stranger had no shadow, which made him tense up. The stranger realized that Katsuki might be afraid of ghosts. Katsuki was taken aback, and the stranger teased him about being scared. Before he could finish, Minoma was silenced by Kendo, who intervened. Kaminari questioned how the stranger knew about Katsuki's fear. The stranger reassured them that he was not a ghost, technically. He then explained that during a battle on Nabu Island, Midoriya had transferred One for All to Katsuki, but the transfer was incomplete, leaving some remnants of the power within him. Katsuki took a moment to process this information, and once he did, he erupted in anger, yelling at Midoriya for what he had done. Midoriya defended himself, explaining that everyone on the island was in danger, including Katsuma and Mahoro. Aizawa, wanting answers, asked what One for All was, causing Midoriya and Katsuki to freeze. Uraraka looked at them with concern, sensing they were hiding something. Meanwhile, Shigaraki and All for One exchanged glances, and AFO suggested they consider kidnapping Bakugo again, as it would be beneficial to have him on their side if this reality mirrored their own. The League of Villains nodded in agreement, though Hawks remained attentive to their conversation. Shigaraki pointed out that Bakugo was too stubborn to join them willingly, but AFO assured him they had ways to convince him. Spinner asked what One for All was, but AFO promised to explain everything once they reached their base. Toga expressed her thoughts about Midoriya, noting that he was the better one and possessed the one-for-all ability. Dabi explained that Midoriya was strong and closely connected with the heroes, making Bakugo a more suitable target for manipulation. Bakugo tended to isolate himself, which could make him easier to control. Shigaraki mumbled something about feeling overshadowed. All Might intervened, suggesting that the heroes should not pressure the kids to reveal such secrets. Aizawa felt this information was crucial but decided to let it go for the moment. Bakugo insisted that they should discuss the matter, emphasizing its importance. He closed and locked the door before sitting on his bed. The Vestige, who communicated with Bakugo, pointed out that he was the only one able to connect with him. Bakugo was frustrated that the Vestige appeared while he was awake, questioning why he was not seen in Midoriya's dreams. The Vestige explained that they needed to devise a plan regarding Midoriya. Bakugo was puzzled, noting that Midoriya had mastered Black Whip and was training for his other quirks. The group learned from Danny that Midoriya would eventually have access to 6 additional quirks, although he was unaware of when they would manifest. The revelation shocked everyone, leaving Midoriya looking pale. The Vestige made eye contact with Bakugo and declared that Midoriya was not fit to be the holder of One for All, causing the screen to go black. Midoriya panicked, wondering if this meant the previous users did not approve of him. All Might attempted to reassure him, suggesting that they simply had not recognized his potential yet. Danny promised to clarify everything by the end of their reaction. With a snap of her fingers, notes appeared before All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo, indicating that once their task was complete, everyone's memories related to One for All would be erased. Danny then announced the next universe, which was one where Endeavor was not obsessed with surpassing All Might. The group reacted in disbelief, repeating the word impossible in unison. Endeavor wanted to respond to the disbelief but held back when he saw Shoto, who was not facing him. In a news segment featuring the Todoroki family, the hostess asked how it felt to make hero ranking history. Endeavor expressed his honor and commitment to protecting Japan. Kaminari made a light-hearted remark about Endeavor's demeanor, which earned him disapproving looks from Ida and Jiro. Hawks offered Endeavor a supportive pat on the back, though he struggled to contain his laughter. Endeavor reflected on his journey to becoming a pro-hero, expressing gratitude for the path he had taken. As the mic was passed to Toya, Endeavor and Shoto smiled at Rei's presence. Pony complimented Rei, and Todoroki agreed, acknowledging her beauty. Toya shared his lifelong dream of becoming a hero, vowing to make his family and Japan proud, which excited the audience. Fuyumi took her turn with the mic, and Midnight noticed tears on the face of the number 2 hero, leaving everyone to respect his emotions. Todoroki reassured Momo that he was fine, explaining that he barely remembered Toya since he had passed away when Todoroki was young. He wistfully noted that he wished Fuyumi and Natsuo could have been there. Fuyumi expressed her honor in reaching this point, emphasizing her desire to make the world safer for everyone. Natsuo confidently declared his commitment to serving justice, earning cheers from his fans, especially the girls. He passed the microphone to Shoto. Shiro commented on how Todoroki's brother had many fans, expressing his frustration that he wished he could have the same attention. Aizawa shot a glare at Mineta, warning him to keep quiet about his thoughts. Hawks remarked to Endeavor that his son seemed pretty relaxed, though Endeavor silently disagreed. The reporter took back the microphone from Shoto, who was hiding his face in his hands. Natsuo playfully ruffled Shoto's hair, eliciting laughter from the audience. Mina squealed about how cute Todoroki was, while Shiro teased him for being camera shy. Bakugo boasted that he would have performed better, but no one paid him much attention. Midoriya complimented Todoroki, who mumbled a thank you, his shyness only endearing him more to the girls. Danny smirked, whispering about the honor of the moment. The hostess announced the number 2 heroes Endeavor, Blizzard, Dabi, Misty, Judicator, and Freezerburn celebrating their unique family bond. As they exited, music played, and images of the Todoroki family were projected behind them. Shoto glanced at Dabi, who met his gaze with surprise. Shoto inquired about a connection to Toya, and Dabi, initially shocked, denied it. However, he subtly acknowledged the truth when the heroes looked away. Shigaraki attempted to speak but was interrupted by Endeavor, who called out to Toya, only to be met with silence. Dabi, with a menacing grin, stated that Toya was dead, creating a heavy tension in the air. Danny felt compelled to intervene, feigning amazement at the hero's accomplishments. Bakugo commented on the situation, suggesting that if Endeavor had been a better father, things might have been different. Danny shot him a warning look, but he dismissed her concern. Hawks tried to lighten the mood, expressing his admiration for the heroes. Midoriya excitedly asked if they could see the images on the wall as they exited, and Danny agreed, noting she could only show pictures, not videos. Snapped her fingers, and Hawks complimented Endeavor, much to his annoyance. Kendo remarked on how powerful she looked, while Uraraka noted Todoroki's mother's beauty. Kirishima exclaimed about her manliness, and Todoroki smiled at the sight of his mother, thinking she seemed happier there. Denki was starstruck, and Tetsu praised Todoroki's coolness. Hagakure noted how expressive Todoroki appeared, receiving nods of agreement. Toga suggested they could make Dabi's costume more obvious, to which he lightly elbowed her, telling her to be quiet. Jiro commented on the caregiver vibe his mother gave off, and Todoroki explained that she was a primary teacher, which might be why. Ojiro asked about her quirk, and Todoroki explained that she could create mist. Danny elaborated on how she used her mist to obscure opponents' vision and control its temperature. Midoriya took notes, realizing how dangerous her quirk could be in battle. Aizawa remarked that Todoroki's brother seemed like a good hero, and Sue asked about him. Todoroki explained that his brother was in college studying to be a doctor. Danny described his quirk, which allowed him to manipulate ice, melt it, and control it in its liquid form, but only if it was very cold. Present Mike attempted a pun about the quirk, but Aizawa facepalmed. Dabi quietly missed his brother, contemplating the possibility of reconnecting with Natsuo, knowing how much he despised their father. Dabi pushed the thought away, recognizing the unlikelihood of it happening. Endeavor noted how much happier his son looked, which only deepened his guilt. Bakugo commented on how strange it was to see Todoroki without his scar, and Mina agreed. Ida reminded everyone that it was inappropriate to comment on scars, but Bakugo ignored him. Midoriya observed that Todoroki seemed to have more control over his quirk, and Shoji remarked on his skill. Danny announced the next universe, noting it was a sad one. As the screen loaded, she explained that in this universe, Midoriya was a half-alien known as a gem, forced to deal with the aftermath of a war started by his mother, Nana Shimura. She explained that since Nana had given up her form to create Midoriya, it made him a part of her legacy, yet separate at the same time. It was complicated, they explained. They nodded their heads slowly, processing the information they received, except for All Might and Midoriya. Tenko was described as a gem who came to disrupt everyone's happiness and erased most of the memories of Midoriya's friends. The group nodded in understanding, except for All for One and Shigaraki. Just then, the screen began to play. Izuku and Tenko walked through a deserted garden that appeared sad and gray. Izuku looked exhausted while Tenko stared down at the ground. "This Tenko guy looks a lot like Shigaraki," Vlad commented. "Yeah, except he has black hair and good skin," Shoji added. Shigaraki looked offended but chose to remain silent, observing his former self. In the garden, Tenko's voice echoed as he suggested they play a game, demonstrating how it was done. The scene shifted to Nana walking in the same garden with Tenko, but this time the place was vibrant and alive. "Here in the garden, stand very still. This will be so much fun," she said, bending down slightly to be at eye level with him. And then she smiled. "That's what I'm after," the smile in her eyes, the sound of her laughter. Happy to listen. Happy to play. Happily watching her drift away. Nana was shown walking toward a warp before disappearing, leaving Tenko behind, smiling as he waited for her return. "He really loves her, huh?" All Might said, sadness evident in his voice. Shigaraki turned away from the screen, the only one to notice Kurojairi placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Happily waiting all on my own, under the endless sky. Counting the seconds, standing alone as thousands of years go by." The scene depicted Tenko standing in the same spot as the seasons changed around him. Thousands of years. Ojiro exclaimed in shock. Remember, they are aliens, Danny reminded him. No, I meant she left him for thousands of years, he clarified, causing many to realize the gravity of the situation. Happily wondering night after night, is this how it works? Am I doing this right? Happy to listen. Happy to stay. Happily watching her drift away. Night sped by in a montage. Poor kid, Vlad said. You keep on turning pages for people who don't care about you. The scene shifted to present-day Izuku and Tenko. While singing, Tenko picked a wilting rose from a dead bush and handed it to Izuku. And still it takes you ages to see that no one's there, see that no one's there, see that no one's there. Everyone's gone on without you. A faded image of Nana laughing appeared, but as Tenko continued singing, the image changed, showing her smiling less and less around him. Izuku looked at him, empathy evident on his face. Shigaraki felt a single tear escape his left eye. All for one smiled at the screen, but only All Might noticed. He then looked at Shigaraki, wanting to reach out but knowing it would be futile. Finally news about how the story ends. She doesn't exist now, survived by her son and all of her brand new friends. A hologram appeared behind the still waiting Tenko, who turned his head as he noticed it. The hologram showed Izuku talking about something with a huge smile on his face. Isn't that just cruel? Even though he was right, it didn't stop All Might and Danny from glaring at All for One. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that cool and isn't that cruel? And aren't I a fool to have happily listened, happy to stay? Past Tenko finally moved, breaking the vines that had formed around his feet as he ran toward the hologram. As he reached it, the hologram ended, and he fell to his knees in front of the stairs leading to it. Present Tenko and Izuku moved closer to his past self, continuing to sing as they watched past Tenko cry, with Midoriya looking at him in pity. Happily watching her drift. Past Tenko disappeared as the memory concluded. Drift away. A white glow surrounded him, and when it faded, Tenko was revealed with blue hair, pale skin, large eye bags, and eyes that looked as if they had just been crying with black streaks running down his face. Many gasped as they realized the person on screen was Shigaraki. They turned to look at him, but he yelled at them. What are you looking at? Leave me. The heroes looked away, some wiping their own tears. Toga hugged their leader from behind, who tensed up at first but then relaxed and accepted the comfort. She was joined by Twice, Compress, Spinner, and even Danny, who refused to let go until they felt he was better. Dabi gave him an awkward pat on the shoulder. Moving on to part 2. Danny announced, redirecting their focus. There's a part 2 to this? Shigaraki asked tiredly, glancing at the teenager beside him. Sorry, there is, they confirmed, though she didn't seem happy about it, likely because she didn't like seeing him sad. Whatever, he dismissed. Tenko, you've got your memories back. I can't believe Mom did that to you. Actually, I can totally believe it, you're not the only one she hurt. Izuku stepped closer to Tenko, trying to comfort him, but before he could touch him, Tenko harshly swatted him away, causing him to stumble and fall back. He stomped a foot on Izuku's stomach. Yeah, you must know all about her life without me. Rub it in, why don't you? Tenko prepared to punch him. No, it's not like that. You deserve a better friend, Izuku insisted, trying to summon a shield, but it glitched out. Something's wrong with his powers, Uraraka pointed out. Tenko screamed and then turned to punch the hologram stand, breaking it before crashing down to the ground with a sigh. Tenko, come back and save the Earth with me. You can make new friends, Izuku said, reaching a hand out toward him. Tenko turned his head further away, causing Izuku to retract his arm. The Earth! Pony exclaimed, speaking for the few who were staring at the screen wide-eyed. Bakugu observed the gesture Midoriya made to Shigaraki. He looked down with a smile and a hollow chuckle. DMN nerd. Someday, somewhere, somehow, you'll love again. You just need to find someone. He knelt beside Tenko, trying to cheer him up. He held out his arm again, and this time Tenko saw it and accepted it, allowing Izuku to help him up. Someday, somewhere, somehow, I'll love again. I just need to find someone, they sang together. Izuku let go of his hand, leading the way. Someone who treats you me better. Someone who wants you around. Midoriya turned and gave Tenko a small smile, which shocked him since he hadn't received a genuine one in so long. Someday, somewhere, somehow, they would feel found. Izuku extended his arm again as they stepped onto the warp, and Tenko gladly took it. Shigaraki looked down at his own hands, slightly squeezing them. When they arrived at Izuku's home, he jumped out of the warp and ran to the door, checking if Tenko was following before disappearing inside. Today, right here, right now, he already felt found. Tears welled in his eyes as he followed Izuku. Midoriya thought that maybe that was all the Shigaraki here needed to be found and saved. Toga gushed about Izuku's kindness, while Dabi flicked her forehead and acted as if nothing had happened when she glared at him. If he finds him, he'll come back here, Komori said just as Izuku jumped into the room. He exclaimed that he was back, and Komori happily yelled in response. Kodai told Komori to read the room, and Komori sheepishly nodded. Kurwaro blushed slightly. Izuku encouraged Tenko to come down, though he was having doubts. He pointed at himself and expressed concern that they might not be thrilled to see him like this. Izuku reassured him that they just needed to talk to them and helped Tenko down the stairs. Tada! Izuku said awkwardly, causing everyone in the room to panic. Momo took out a staff, Komori grabbed a whip, and Todoroki, looking somewhat off, rushed toward them. Oh Tenko, did you change your hair? Todoroki asked. Danny explained that Todoroki seemed off because his memories hadn't been restored yet like the others. Izuku quickly tried to calm the situation, explaining that even though Tenko had regained his memories, he wasn't going to hurt anyone. The situation escalated when Uraraka came through a portal on a green lion, jumping out and pulling out a sword, ready for a battle that never came. Hisashi emerged from the bathroom but quickly retreated upon seeing the death glares directed at him. Midoriya thought to himself that he was cool in this universe, though he didn't seem to have a gem like the rest of them. Uraraka questioned her role, assuming she was the human friend in the group. Danny warned that the video would skip forward a bit, and just as she said, the scene changed. Midoriya was mumbling to himself, trying to figure out how to restore Todoroki. They were now outside, where the giant injector stood. What about me? Tenko asked, and Izuku looked at him with confusion. Is that all you needed me for? To turn off my injector? Tenko seemed sad. Well, sort of, but not. Izuku was cut off. Well, what now? I did what you wanted, that's it? Tenko's worry grew. Well, yeah, we can just forget this whole thing ever happened, Izuku said, sensing the rising tension. Poor choice of words, Minoma mumbled, focused on the screen. How are you going to forget with me around? I'm the source of all your problems. Don't pretend you want me here. What's your plan for me, huh? You're going to put me somewhere? You're going to leave me, somewhere? You're going to leave me alone? He yelled, shaking. Tenga twice gave Shigaraki a squeeze, which he would have preferred not to happen but made no effort to stop. Many looked at the screen with sadness, clearly hearing the pain and fear in Tenko's voice. Izuku tried to approach him, but Tenko pushed him back, causing him to fall and the rejuvenator to slip from his pocket. Todoroki picked it up while Momo and Komori ran from it in fear. Oh, what's this? Todoroki wondered. Shoto, don't touch that. Izuku said, running to him, but it was too late. Todoroki unintentionally activated it, and Midoriya quickly grabbed it from him. The scythe-like device was what Tenko used to erase all their memories. It was made for resetting gems, Danny explained. Why do you have that? Todoroki asked, slightly scared. I was just carrying it. I didn't have anywhere else to put it, Midoriya said, trying to explain. We can just forget this ever happened. You mean I can just forget this ever happened? Tenko laughed sarcastically. What a plan. He yelled. I turn off the injector, and the moment my back is turned, bam. Problem solved. Well, think again, you're not getting rid of me that easily. Tenko blew a horn while pointing at them, causing the large machine to turn toward them. Run for it. Hatsum yelled as everyone sprinted to safety while the injector tore through the ground. The ground was pummeled, and Tenko made his way over to Izuku. I'm not letting you get one over on me, Izuku Midoriya, he said, now extremely angry. I wasn't going to wipe your memory, Izuku tried to convince him. You expect me to believe that you want me like this? He pointed to himself. I feel kind of bad for him, Denki admitted. Yeah, it's clear he doesn't think of himself as any good, Kirishima said, relating to him on some level. Some members of the league scoffed, seeing that the heroes only cared when they had a tragic story made obvious to them, and even then, the most they would do is feel bad before tossing them away without attempting to solve the real issue. Izuku? Why are you fighting? Aren't we all friends? Todoroki asked, peeking from a corner nearby. Tenko then caught sight of him. Looks like we still have an audience. He harshly grabbed Todoroki by the arm and roughly forced him onto his knees. How about a front row seat? He asked sarcastically. Shoto. Midoriya cried. Todoroki. A few in the audience gasped. You know, this is kind of twisted, but I'm a little flattered that you liked the old me, Tenko said, letting go of Todoroki, who sat there in confusion, watching everything unfold. Innocent. Loving. Stupid. He made different gestures to match what he was saying. Shigaraki said, stupid, in sync with his on-screen self. Some heroes looked at him with sadness, but their looks were ignored. Efo tried not to smile but failed, allowing the corner of his lips to perk up just a bit. Tenko's face then changed, catching Todoroki in a side hug, his face lighting up again with a mocking smile. If that's your thing, why don't you keep him like this? He tilted his head toward Todoroki, whom he pushed forward while still holding him. Get away from him, Midoriya stood up, glaring at Tenko. He appeared ready to wield the scythe in his hands. Tenko wrapped his arms around Todoroki, reminiscent of a snake coiling around its prey, taunting him about being protective of his true friends while being careless with the false ones. Midoriya demanded that he stop, but Tenko provoked him further, challenging him to attack. Midoriya firmly refused, while Present Mike wondered aloud about Tenko's motives. All Might suggested that Tenko aimed to undermine Midoriya's morality, a sentiment Bakugo echoed, suggesting Tenko was trying to drag Midoriya down to his level. Midoriya responded to Bakugo, who growled at him to not tell him what to do. Tenko's anger flared, but Midoriya stood his ground, asserting that Tenko's words were not true. With determination, Midoriya used his knee to break the Rejuvenator. As Todoroki regained his memories, he transformed back to his normal self, sending a shockwave that blasted Tenko away. Seeing his friend return, Midoriya rushed to hug him, followed closely by the rest of the crystal gems. Todoroki welcomed their affection, and many students expressed their joy at his return. Tenko charged at them, but Todoroki intercepted him, leading to a fierce battle that saw Kimori and Momo join the fray. Tenko struggled against the three, who displayed impressive teamwork. Vlad praised their efforts, and though Mina felt a bit frustrated, they all thanked him. In a moment of desperation, Tenko was thrown by Todoroki to the top of his injector. Remembering the device, he blew his horn, causing it to inject a strange substance into the ground. Neon pink cracks formed in the earth, and poison erupted, raining down on the city. Civilians scrambled to evacuate as chaos ensued, with buildings shaking and new terrains complicating their escape. Denki expressed his shock, while Kirishima voiced his concern for everyone's safety. Fo watched in awe, prompting Danny to suppress the urge to punch him. The crystal gems, including Uraraka, rushed out to help save people, while Midoriya insisted they act quickly, despite his diminished powers. He was determined to confront Spinel, begging the gems to hurry. Others watched the unfolding events with skepticism about Midoriya's sanity but remained silent. He prepared himself before taking a massive leap toward the injector. As he soared through the air, his gem glowed briefly before he panicked, realizing he was no longer floating. He fell but managed to grab hold of the injector after slipping down a few feet, prompting a collective sigh of relief from those watching. Midoriya glanced back at the damaged city, noticing a large glow emanating from it, but before anyone could discern its source, the screen abruptly cut to black. Many exclaimed in disbelief, while Danny dramatically lamented the interruption, expressing disappointment that the exciting part had been cut off. Nizu inquired if the scene could continue, but Danny explained the limitations of their abilities. With a sigh, Danny summoned the next universe, but a portal opened unexpectedly, and a girl flew through, nearly crashing to the floor. Shoji's quick reflexes saved her just in time. She looked up at him, momentarily frozen before awkwardly greeting him. Shoji asked if she was all right, and she confirmed she was fine. The girl, dressed in a worn gray hoodie and black pants, had steel gray eyes and short, messy curly hair styled in an undercut ponytail. As she surveyed her surroundings, she adopted a defensive stance, demanding to know where she was. Shoji reassured her that nothing harmful was happening, which eased her tension. A note appeared in Danny's hand, which they read aloud. It explained that she had been transported to react to the multiverse alongside the others, and that quirks wouldn't work in this place. The girl, named Baiko, expressed her shock at the existence of the multiverse, and Danny felt relieved that she already had some understanding of it. A seat manifested between Danny and Bakugo, and Danny gestured for Baiko to sit. After a moment of hesitation, she complied, and as she did, her clothes transformed into something cleaner and more stylish, matching the others in the room. When she inquired about her belongings, Danny reassured her that they were safe and would be returned after their time there. Baiko insisted on having them back immediately, and Danny nodded, snapping their fingers to comply. Baiko's hoodie rested comfortably on her lap, and she decided to tie it around her waist. Although she felt out of place, she chose to embrace the situation unfolding around her. Several students introduced themselves, and she reciprocated, requesting they call her by her first name, Fayola. Fayola quickly realized she was the odd one out. Unlike the others in the room, she wasn't a villain, pro-hero, or even a hero student. This made her question her presence there. Danny explained that she was closely involved with them in enough universes to be summoned by the boss to join them. When Fayola inquired about the boss's identity, Danny mentioned that they couldn't disclose that information. With that settled, they were ready to continue. Danny clapped her hands and announced that the next segment was titled, Change Your Mind. As the scene shifted, Bakugo walked away from Midoriya, likely heading back to the dorms. Both looked worn out and exhausted. Aizawa noted that this moment followed their recent fight. Tetsu exclaimed in surprise that they were the two students who had fought, while Monoma sarcastically remarked about the reputation of classy. Fayola quietly mumbled to herself, pretending to understand the situation. Midoriya finally gathered his courage and called out to Bakugo, who turned with his usual scowl, curious about what Midoriya wanted. Taking a deep breath, Midoriya expressed that he didn't need Bakugo's respect because he respected himself. Bakugo seemed momentarily taken aback. Midoriya continued, stating he didn't need Bakugo's love because he loved himself. Tears welled in Midoriya's eyes, but he remained resolute. Uraraka cheered Midoriya on, but he was too focused on the screen to acknowledge her. Bakugo avoided eye contact, staring at the floor. Concerned, Bakugo's friends called out to him, but he told them to be quiet, still not facing them. Uraraka, Todoroki, and Ida checked on Midoriya, who replied with a sad smile and a single tear escaping his eye. The screen displayed a paused image from their fight, showing Bakugo approaching Midoriya midair for a punch, while Midoriya prepared to counter with a kick. Todoroki observed the contrasting expressions on their faces, leading to a moment of confusion. Midoriya, weary, urged Todoroki to snap out of it. The screen then showed hands struggling to hold onto each other, followed by an image of both boys in the All Might pose, looking battered and bruised. Bakugo finally looked up and recognized the scene as taking place at Nabu Island. Many in the audience were left wondering what had transpired there. The screen faded to black, prompting All Might to comment on the previous scene. Midoriya glanced at Bakugo, who still avoided eye contact but felt Midoriya's gaze. Bakugo yelled at Midoriya to stop staring at him, while Todoroki placed a reassuring hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya responded with a small smile, and Kirishima joined in, surprised that Bakugo allowed it. Danny then introduced the next segment, Here Comes a Thought. Fayola asked if she was included, but Danny apologized, saying she wasn't. Kirishima reassured Fayola that many others hadn't appeared yet either. On the screen, All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo sat cross-legged on a hill overlooking the ocean. Midoriya and Bakugo sat side by side, with All Might facing them. Uraraka expressed surprise that All Might spent time with Bakugo, but Denki clarified that All Might was usually with their group. Aizawa playfully warned All Might about favoritism, causing the hero to chuckle nervously. All Might instructed them to close their eyes and breathe deeply. He guided them into a meditative state, encouraging them to listen to the waves and let their worries fade away. As Bakugo peeked, he was astonished to find himself in a stunning, starry environment. Fayola and others marveled at the beauty of the scene. Midoriya began to mutter about flexibility, love, and trust, which irritated Bakugo, prompting him to elbow Midoriya to focus. The scene shifted to shadows looming over a frightened Midoriya, leading to a realization about his past experiences with bullying. When questioned, Midoriya admitted it had affected him but reassured everyone that he was okay. Ida insisted that it was not acceptable, and Aizawa promised they would discuss it further after the presentation. As the segment continued, it became clear that Bakugo had been a supportive presence for Midoriya during those difficult times. They were in middle school together, Kirishima said confidently. Bakugo remained quiet, but no one thought much of it. Tokoyami observed that one of the shadows resembled Bakugo. Midoriya had moments of excitement around All Might, and he asked his idol if things were really that bad. All Might laughed and playfully ruffled Midoriya's hair, a gesture that Class 1A had grown accustomed to. As All Might left Midoriya alone on the roof, he looked back with a hint of guilt. Midoriya whispered All Might's name, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over him. An illusion of Midoriya appeared, mumbling to himself in a panic, dressed in his hero costume with his hands on his head. Butterflies surrounded him but were blown away to reveal an illusion of All Might, who rested a reassuring arm on his shoulder, calming him down. The heroes smiled at the sight. All Might encouraged them to take a moment for themselves, reminding them that they had nothing to fear. Midoriya smiled back at All Might, feeling content. All Might jokingly transformed into his muscular form before reverting, which caused Aizawa to cringe and Shigaraki to agree that the pun was bad. Bakugo hesitated, wanting to say something but unsure how. Midoriya and All Might were bright with smiles until Bakugo sang about a thought that alarmed him. Many in the audience were surprised to hear Bakugo join in. He reflected on his past actions, facing the camera with a challenging smile and small explosions sparking from one hand. Midoriya, sensing the tension, wondered if Bakugo had contributed to his bullying but chose not to answer. Bakugo stood up and walked away from them, approaching a newly formed illusion of himself, wide-eyed and breathing heavily. Fayola noticed Bakugo's clenched fists and wanted to help but felt uncertain. Bakugo kicked at his illusion, causing it to dissipate in a swirl of smoke. As the smoke curled around his neck, he felt a hand grab his arm. Midoriya stepped into the mist, revealing that he was the one holding Bakugo's hand. Bakugo tensed but remained silent. The other students noticed his sudden quietness. Midoriya took Bakugo's other hand, dispelling the fog. Together, they sang about taking a moment to remind themselves of who they were and whether this was how they would fall apart. They began to dance slowly, gradually finding their rhythm and moving more freely. Midoriya beamed while Bakugo's lips curled into a smile. Bakugo broke away to challenge All Might to join them. The three of them spun together, and the surroundings returned to normal, revealing that they were still on the hill. Midoriya flopped onto the grass, still smiling. Bakugo joined him, and All Might followed suit, looking content. They spent a moment admiring the sky above. Bakugo took a deep breath and exhaled, contemplating flexibility, love, and trust. The last image was of the three of them smiling before the screen faded to black. Hawks asked if Danny was crying, trying to peek over at her. She insisted she wasn't, just overwhelmed by the wholesome moment. Fayola awkwardly tried to comfort her by rubbing her back. Kirishima commented on Bakugo's pants, suggesting he needed a belt, while Ashido agreed. Bakugo yelled at them, but they seemed unfazed. Danny calmed down, ready to head to the next world. Fayola announced that she finally appeared in this one, expressing her excitement. Minoma questioned why she was appearing before them, but Danny told him not to worry about it. As the scene shifted, Fayola, clearly feeling the effects of her drinks, handed the mic over to Awaze, who was surprised to find himself in the spotlight. Tetsu congratulated him on being the best man, while Ashido complimented Fayola despite her state. Awais led a toast to the groom, and the crowd echoed the sentiment. He then raised a glass to the bride, sparking curiosity about who would marry Todoroki. The crowd joined in, and the screen showed Momo crying tears of joy. Awais felt a pang in his chest, singing about being there for his brother. Yosetsu's eyes glistened with tears as he reflected on their bond. Dabi questioned how they could be brothers, and another character reluctantly agreed, noting that it didn't make sense. They didn't even share a last name, Tokage wondered. Danny explained that many people were related in unexpected ways, but in this case, Awais had been adopted. They raised their glasses to celebrate the union and the revolution, which Shigaraki questioned. Awais turned to Todoroki, acknowledging the hope he provided. He wished for them to always be satisfied, and as he looked at Momo, his eyes widened as everything around him began to move backward. Voices echoed in a strange chorus, and Dabi struggled to comprehend the chaos, while Jiraiya found it fascinating. Awais stood still, watching the world rewind until it stopped at the night everything began. He recalled that night, feeling like a ghost as memories played out before him. He saw himself walking with Shoto and reflected on the regrets he carried. Momo wondered why he felt that way, and Danny visibly cringed. Awais felt anxiety wash over him, tightening his chest and sending tingles through his limbs. He remembered how the soldier boys had tried to win the sisters' praise, with Uraraka, Momo, and Fayola drawing attention. Fayola noticed a guy awkwardly flirting with Uraraka, who looked uncomfortable, and they both giggled. Awais recalled the dreamlike ambience of that night and how he first saw Momo's face. The room fell silent, and he wished to sink into his seat, feeling embarrassed as the girls found his affection for Momo endearing. Momo felt her cheeks heat up but couldn't speak. Toga, bursting with excitement, speculated about a blossoming love triangle, while Todoroki attempted to interject but was interrupted by Toga's enthusiasm. Awais' past self complimented Momo's beauty, and the atmosphere shifted. Fayola commented on his awkward approach, and Bakugu silently agreed. Momo responded with intrigue, and Awais, avoiding eye contact, revealed his name. When she asked about his family, he hesitated, backing away into the party, leaving her confused. Todoroki pointed out the change of subject, and Dabi made a snide remark about Endeavor, who remained silent. Bakugu expressed his irritation at the family drama on display, and Fayola inquired if it was a common occurrence. Bakugu confirmed it was. Back at the party, Awais, feeling more energized, approached Rin and shared his excitement. Rin acknowledged his presence, and Awais boasted about the superiority of their class. Monoma, laughing maniacally, was silenced by Kendo's swift intervention. Awais expressed the thrill of matching wits with someone at his level, shaking Rin with enthusiasm. He described the feeling of freedom and enlightenment, comparing it to a famous historical moment. Uraraka found his excitement adorable, while Momo observed his fidgeting hands and realized he was struggling. She smiled as she returned to the party, and Aizawa praised her observant nature. Awais admired Momo's intelligence and beauty, wishing to take her far away from their current reality. However, he turned to see Shoto, whose expression reflected helplessness as he watched Momo dance and laugh. Awais recognized three fundamental truths at that moment. Momo, curious, asked where Awais was taking her, and he claimed he was about to change her life. She playfully encouraged him to lead the way. The others sensed what was about to unfold and felt sympathy for Awais. Toga and Twice dramatically embraced, tears in their eyes. Awais understood that what he witnessed wasn't his reality, yet it still stung to see Momo with Todoroki. He feared that the same fate awaited him here, but he resolved to endure it, wanting nothing more than Momo's happiness. As she glanced at him, he found himself staring at the floor once again. She couldn't blame him. She understood how awkward this must be. She wanted to talk to him but decided it would be best to save it for later. Todoroki felt an urge to apologize even though he hadn't done anything wrong. He didn't even have feelings for Momo in that way. Awais expressed his disdain, noting that Momo was a girl in a world where her only role was to marry someone wealthy. Fayola acknowledged how unfortunate that must be, and Momo, grateful for her understanding parents, mentioned that despite her family's high status, they didn't want to dictate her life. Fayola felt a twinge of jealousy but kept it to herself. She wondered if she had parents in that universe since she was related to Momo and Uraraka, who seemed to have a typical family dynamic. Now, she envied her alternate self as well. Awais continued, explaining that Momo's father had no sons, which meant she had to social climb for a suitable partner, as she was the oldest and the prettiest, with gossip swirling around her in New York City. Deku was excited to hear they were in New York, mentioning how he had always wanted to go there, recalling that All Might had spent some time there long ago. Fayola confirmed that New York was amazing, having visited for a few months when she was 7. Midoriya asked if she could share her experiences later, and she agreed. Awais lamented that he was the penniless son, feeling dejected but still caring for Momo. Midnight gasped silently, realizing he was letting her go because he believed he couldn't provide for her. Shoto Todoroki introduced himself with a bow, and Awais smiled, revealing that Shoto was his brother. Awais continued, explaining that Momo was sought after because she was a Rozu's sister who could elevate others' status. He introduced her to Shoto, suggesting that perhaps that was why she was now his bride. Momo bowed in gratitude for all the support she received, and Shoto took her hand, kissing it gently, which earned him a compliment from Danny. Awais, feeling disheartened, decided to leave them alone. Awais expressed his deep understanding of his brother, believing that if he told Shoto he loved Momo, Shoto would resign himself to the situation, even if it meant lying about his feelings. Midoriya felt sadness at the unfolding events, while Hagakure cried silently, feeling the weight of the moment. Awais reflected on his fantasies of Momo, wishing things had been different, but at least his brother was marrying her. He sang a heartfelt tribute from the balcony where he first met her, a bittersweet smile on his lips as he twirled a wine glass. As Awais continued his speech, he cheered himself up, raising his glass in a toast to the groom and bride, tears streaming down his cheeks, interpreted as tears of joy. He sang about Yosetsu, who was always by Momo's side, celebrating their union and the hope she provided. He concluded his song, returning to sit with his friends, acknowledging that he knew Momo would be happy as Shoto's bride, even if Shoto himself would never be truly satisfied. Many in the room were emotional, some crying while others scoffed at the display. Awais finally spoke to Momo after what felt like an eternity, asking if she would like to go out with him sometime. Momo, surprised but pleased, smiled warmly and agreed. Awais celebrated internally, feeling hopeful. Shiro comforted Todoroki, acknowledging that it must hurt but assuring him he would find someone someday. Todoroki clarified that he wasn't interested in a relationship and didn't harbor any romantic feelings for Momo. Shiro leaned back, surprised but relieved. Twice pointed out Todoroki's heartbreak, noting his expressionless face. Aizawa suggested moving on to the next universe, tired of the emotional atmosphere. Danny attempted to get Danny's attention, exclaiming how adorable Momo and Awais were, which amused them. Danny announced the next universe would be The Moon Rises, and everyone prepared to move on. Midoriya found himself walking down a grand corridor in what appeared to be a mansion, which turned out to be a magnificent castle. As he looked out at the beautifully illuminated land, Toga swooned over how rich he seemed, prompting a glare from Uraraka. Inside, Midoriya gazed solemnly out the window, dressed in elegant fantasy prince attire, black with green accents and gold buttons. All Might praised his appearance, and Uraraka blushed, complimenting him as well. Many in the room resisted the urge to shout for them to kiss already. As the hours passed, the soft light faded, and Midoriya reflected on the lovely night, ready to walk a moonlit field. An imaginary world surrounded him, making it seem as if he was out in the field beneath the starry night sky. Fayola reflected on the beauty of the night, recalling the times she would gaze at the stars from beneath the trees. Bakugo observed her with a sense of suspicion. Something about her felt off, though he couldn't pinpoint what it was. He pondered why, during such a tranquil and beautiful time, the people of Equestria would lock themselves away, shunning the moon and waiting instead for the sun's arrival. Midoriya's imagined night faded as he continued walking through the hallway, revealing that he was the reason the moon was shining now. Torino the bearded, who was out for a stroll, quietly followed the young prince out of curiosity. Midoriya made his way to the throne room. Afo questioned why the prince's feelings about the night upset him. Danny felt a surge of frustration but held back from expressing it. They explained that Midoriya and his brother were rulers of a magical kingdom, with Midoriya as the prince of the night who controlled the moon, while his brother ruled the sun. Afo pressed for more clarity, but Danny could only suggest that he observe and find out for himself. Uraraka expressed surprise at the mention of a brother, but both Midoriya and Bakugo quickly clarified that he did not have one. Midoriya felt a deep frustration, wishing for others to see things as he did. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they resembled a cat's, with pupils narrowed and irises glowing a neon green. He conjured stars in the shape of people, who bowed eagerly before vanishing into thin air. He questioned why they should not adore him, asserting that he would not be overshadowed, for his light was not lesser. As he stomped his foot in anger, the windows flew open, and a gust of wind swept through, scattering the star figures. Dabi observed that Midoriya did not feel loved or appreciated in the kingdom, while Toga noted that his brother was stealing the spotlight. Twice wondered how they knew it was his brother, and Compress remarked that it was not hard to see. Midoriya bowed his head with a sigh before turning back to the window, expressing his long wait for others to recognize him, believing that the sun might plead, but the moon would stand her ground. A dark aura with green cyan outlines formed around Midoriya's hand as he raised it toward the moon, shooting his magic into the sky. The sky turned a luminous red as his magic reached the moon. Shigaraki questioned what he had done, and Faola replied that it did not look good. Meanwhile, Bakugo was asleep, shaking as if caught in a nightmare, calling out for his brother in terror. Everyone reacted in shock, realizing the connection between Bakugo and Midoriya. Danny remarked on how connected the two were across different universes, and Uraraka mused that Bakugo was indeed Deku's brother in this reality. They all pondered the nature of their rivalry, agreeing that it seemed as if they were created to be opposites. Spinner inquired about what had happened to Bakugo, but Danny urged them to move on. Midoriya declared that he would no longer yield the sky if they could not love both princes. Torino the bearded, still spying, decided to flee, likely to warn Prince Bakugo. Midoriya proclaimed that darkness would reign as the night began, his voice layered and haunting. As he spoke, green fire ignited around him, transforming him into a taller, paler version of himself, with brightly glowing eyes and black hair. His cape shimmered with green fire, and his freckles resembled stars. His laughter echoed throughout the castle, sending chills through all who heard it, even the plants. AFO expressed intrigue at how Midoriya had plunged the world into eternal darkness, while many students and adults felt a chill at witnessing such a drastic change in someone they knew to be kind. Midoriya himself was unsettled by the transformation. Bakugo, though he would not admit it, felt fear. The villains, while scared, were also intrigued, and Faola remained indifferent, knowing there was little she could do. Danny, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room, announced the transition to the next universe, explaining that it would take place in another superhero realm similar to the DC universe. Midoriya expressed excitement, while Danny's high-pitched response raised suspicion. Faola leaned in to observe Danny, who was avoiding eye contact, and the conversation continued. Warning: this video contains Deadpool. They announced that Deadpool was the main character, which should honestly be considered a warning in itself. Everyone looked confused. Danny explained that this particular story included violence and serious themes. Vlad expressed concern about exposing children to such content, but Danny pointed out that they didn't choose the universes they watched. As heroes in training, it was important for them to process these experiences and move on. Bakugo pointed out Faola, questioning what she would do about it. Faola glanced at Danny, silently warning them not to say anything. Danny concluded that Faola would just have to handle it, and she agreed, assuring everyone that she would be okay. With a clap of their hands, Danny signaled the start of the show. A man in a red costume entered a busy bar, immediately drawing everyone's attention. He remarked on the situation, claiming he thought it was a costume party. The silence in the bar was palpable, broken only by a man who needed to cough. The costumed figure pointed out that the coughing man understood the awkwardness. The bartender, visibly irritated, ignored him as he continued to engage with the crowd. The villains in the room exchanged glances, some expressing their annoyance. Deadpool continued to chat, teasing the bartender about his rough day, while the others commented on his talkative nature, comparing him to Twice. As the bartender threatened Deadpool, music began to play, prompting Deadpool to notice and comment on it. Jiru expressed hope for a musical number, while others were less enthusiastic. Deadpool's antics continued, and he made a humorous remark about wanting to be in a musical, bonding with Fayola over their shared love for theater. The scene shifted as Deadpool sang about his uniqueness, drawing the attention of the patrons in the bar. He confidently claimed that no one could take him down, even as he faced off against a group of attackers. His quick reflexes allowed him to dodge and counter their moves with impressive agility. Fayola and the others watched in awe as he took down his opponents with a mix of humor and skill. As the chaos unfolded, Deadpool continued to engage with the audience, stealing a fork and using it in a comical yet effective way against his foes. The heroes reacted with a mix of excitement and concern, questioning the appropriateness of his actions but also enjoying the spectacle. In the midst of the action, Deadpool's antics kept the audience entertained, and the heroes found themselves drawn into the unpredictable world of the red-costumed character. That isn't him, he pointed at his screen self. He suggested that they could ask Pony, Oka, or Momo about their preferred teams. He skipped behind the three girls, who appeared quite exasperated. Avengers, Uraraka stated. X-Men, Pony added. Come on, say X-Force. Deadpool urged hopefully. Bug off, Jean, Momo replied. Several of them reacted with playful dismay. I like X-Force, Fayola chimed in. You don't even know X-Force. Danny retorted. Irrelevant. Fayola shot back. So what's going on with this trio anyway? Stealthy reconnaissance? Super, Charlie's Angels? Oh, I could be your Bosley, he said sarcastically. Something was edited, I can feel it, Mineta remarked. It was nothing, Danny insisted, trying to divert attention from a questionable moment. What was he referencing? Momo inquired, but Danny shrugged in response. Watch your back, sugar, Pony teased, amused. I love your accent, Fayola complimented her. Pony blushed slightly and thanked her in return, maintaining her accent. You speak English? Fayola exclaimed, excited to switch languages. I'm an American exchange student, Pony explained. Awesome. Fayola said, thrilled to have someone to converse with in English. Deadpool turned to see a larger crowd approaching him. No one's fun like Deadpool, he declared, tossing a chimichanga at a guy's face. He shoots like Deadpool, he continued, demonstrating his aim. He didn't miss a single shot, Monoma observed. Impressive, Toga commented, her eyes gleaming at the sight of the chaos. Heroes shouldn't kill like Deadpool, Uraraka added, concerned. Fayola made a noncommittal face. My kill count is pretty intimidating, Deadpool sang, holding up a poster displaying his tally. Hey, kill that guy, Deadpool, the crowd cheered. My kill count is better, Shigaraki declared, trying to one-up him. Whatever, Dabi replied dismissively, which seemed to irritate Shigaraki. Where are they all coming from? Endeavor wondered aloud. Take him down. Cut off his escape. Hey, CC friends, won't you please help me out? He pleaded with the three girls while fending off attackers. They're not going to help him, Midnight remarked, as if it were obvious. I'm handling these guys like it's nothing. I'm so awesome, Twice boasted. The girls shook their heads, with Pony even mouthing out at him. Deadpool bowed his head in disappointment. Jean, look out behind you. Toga warned, panicking. The first one to take down Deadpool wins. A guy swung a chair at Deadpool, knocking him to the ground and kicking him, causing him to flip. The sudden attack shocked the girls. If Spider-Man were here, that would be really cool, he said as someone continued to bash his head against the floor. Suddenly, Spider-Man appeared, hanging upside down from a web, delivering a punch to the attacker. Zero, meet this universe's version of you, Danny said. No way, he replied, amazed. You look awesome, man, Sato added. Why is flex tape helping the villain? Bakugo questioned, to which Danny explained it was a long story. You're lucky I was passing by, Spider-Man said, helping Deadpool up before taking down another attacker. Spidey, your suit does great things for your figure, Deadpool remarked as Spider-Man prepared to swing away. Zero was at a loss for words. Your fighting skills are quite impressive, maybe even better than here, Todoroki noted. Thanks. Zero replied, unsure. Hey, you're no slouch either, someone added. Thanks, voice. But every last inch of me is covered in scars, he said, pulling off his glove to reveal his unique skin. My goodness, what happened to you? Dabi asked incredulously. Cough, hypocrite cough, Viola said, disguising her voice. Hawk sighed, realizing he still had voices in this world too. He felt sympathy for Jean. He was just a guy with bad luck, and he wanted to help change that. Deadpool got shot through his hand while singing to himself. The bullet passed through his hand and hit another guy sneaking up on him. Ow, mother. He cut himself off to shoot the already incapacitated attacker. His hand, many yelled in concern. In this universe, Twice has a healing factor that heals any injury at an alarming rate, making him essentially unkillable. Midoriya would usually be impressed and fanboy over such an amazing quirk, but given the person who possessed it, he felt more concerned for Twice and those around him. No one flips like Deadpool, he declared, executing a backflip to narrowly dodge a swinging bat. Could they stop with the sneak attacks? Cowards, Fayola commented, tired of the same tactics. Changes clips like Deadpool, he shot another guy before reloading. In the corner of the screen, red text read, tell Snipe he really needs to step up his game. Shigaraki, seeing the writing, smirked. Gladly, he replied. Others were trying to decipher how Deadpool was managing all of this. No one wields katanas and strikes like Deadpool, he said, drawing his swords and taking down an opponent. I'm especially good at decapitating, Deadpool declared, using his katana to sever an enemy's head. The scene was dramatic, with the head flying off, and the blood splattering created a striking image of the Deadpool logo on the wall as he winked at the camera. The head landed on a table, and the last words of the defeated foe were, heads roll for Deadpool, before he fell lifelessly. Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to be sick, Uraraka said, feeling nauseous. She unconsciously leaned toward Midoriya, who side-hugged her to offer comfort. The villains were laughing heartily at the scene, while Fayola struggled to contain her laughter. She found it disgusting yet undeniably funny. When I was a boy, I had a unicorn plushie that I cherished, he announced on stage, showcasing his plushie. But lately I've been thinking about the Hulk. What is that like, Uraraka? He held a Hulk plushie up to her face, only to be immediately punched in the face by an unimpressed Uraraka. Was he serious about the unicorn, or was that just a jab at Uraraka? Mineta wondered. I refuse to look into that, so let's assume it's just a jab, Danny replied. No one. The girls exchanged glances before turning their attention back to the remaining attackers. Jokes like Deadpool, Uraraka said, high-kicking someone in the face before grabbing another and punching them. Or provokes like Deadpool. Pony added, flipping an opponent to the ground. No one else has an ego to stoke like Deadpool, Momo said, charging in and deflecting weapons with her swords. Uraraka jumped onto a large guy's shoulders and shocked him. Momo used her abilities to shield herself. Do you guys want to hang out and watch a movie later? Deadpool asked, tossing popcorn onto his mask. No. The girls quickly responded, pausing to look at him before resuming their fight. Oof, rejected, Dabi said. Whatever, Dabi, like you could do better, Deadpool retorted. Teach me to be a chick magnet like you, one voice said sarcastically. Even both of Twice's voices know you couldn't date anyone. Shigaraki laughed, amusement dancing in his eyes. Says the guy with the crusty lips. Dabi shot back, a smirk on his face. At least he has lips. Toga chimed in, seizing the opportunity to tease Dabi. Shut it. Dabi hissed in response. The rest of the league had to step in, restraining the trio before their banter escalated into something foolish. Kurojiiri scolded them, channeling the tone of a mother reprimanding her children for squabbling once again. The students watching couldn't help but think, is this really the villains we've been fearing for almost a year? A parent reflected, this is what my son's life has become, feeling a mix of disappointment and concern. My, what a guy, Deadpool me. Deadpool twirled among the piles of unconscious figures on the floor, dramatic lighting highlighting his antics as confetti rained down from above. Deadpool, Uraraka, Pony, and Momo exited the bar, leaving the bartender as the only conscious one remaining. Hey, who's going to clean this up? He yelled, frustration evident in his voice. Not it, came Deadpool's voice from a distance, his carefree attitude shining through. Perfect, the bartender complained as someone nearby coughed. The screen cut off abruptly. Deadpool appeared on the completely black screen, grinning widely. How was it? Cool, right? Can't wait for you all to see me again in all my awesomeness, he said, gesturing to himself with flair. Danny remained silent, shocked by the unfolding events. What the hell? Bakugu yelled at the screen, his frustration palpable. Cool it with the fireworks, you little chihuahua. Oh, and stay cool, other me who's technically not me but is me. Bye. Deadpool vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. What? FO questioned, genuinely confused. That happened, another voice remarked. Please tell me we're not going to watch him again, All Might said, a hint of exasperation in his tone. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Twice chimed in. Danny glanced at the list. Sorry, All Might, but we are going to revisit him, Danny said, a hint of excitement in her voice. Denki grabbed some popcorn as they prepared to move on to the next universe. Apparently, this will be a long series of events we're going to be watching, but we won't do it consecutively, Danny said, a bit irritated. The group clapped their hands in anticipation. Loading. Sit down, child. Do not quail with peace and love, we will prevail. A voice sang as an image of two faceless figures appeared on the screen. One held a spear, dressed in ancient warrior attire, while the other wore a robe and was weaponless. That sounds like Mom. Midoriya asked, curiosity piqued. That is indeed Inko's voice. She appears for a while in this universe, Danny explained. Your mom has a beautiful voice, young Midoriya, All Might complimented, a warm smile on his face. Thanks, All Might, she really does, Midoriya beamed with pride. If you climb along this trail, you will hear the Undertale. Undertale? Shigaraki questioned, intrigued. Hush now, little ones, I have a story for you. A story about men. And monsters, the voice continued. Story time, Kaminari said, sarcasm lacing his tone yet showing interest. Long ago, men and beasts ruled the earth and had their feasts. Then one day, a war broke out. The image displayed silhouettes of two crowds in what appeared to be a battlefield, one figure holding a trident leading one side, while another wielded a sword on the opposing side. Why did a war break out? Hawks asked, his brow furrowing in concern. The humans started the war because the monsters had the ability to absorb their souls and become more powerful. Of course, no monster had done such, but the humans were driven by fear, Danny explained. The audience nodded in understanding. Blood was spilled as never before. No monster will know love. No monster belongs in the world above. Seal them underground. Let this barrier surround them, the humans sang. The humans, filled with determination, won the war and sealed the monsters deep beneath Mount Ebott, creating a barrier only a human soul could pass, Inko narrated. What the heck? The monsters didn't do anything to deserve that. Fayola exclaimed, standing up and looking at Danny, who merely shrugged. Many injustices are done to the innocent, no matter the world, Danny replied. One of the reasons I dislike society, especially this hero-centric one, Shigaraki added, his tone laced with disdain. Fayola sat down, anger simmering beneath the surface. Too bad there aren't heroes there, I'm sure they would have fixed everything, Midoriya said, sadness evident in his voice. Humans are fickle beings, Nizu remarked thoughtfully. Many years, many tears. We live on despite our fears. There's no chance we could have won. Now we'll never see the sun. stones instead of stars above. We've lost hopes, dreams, and love, the monsters sang. The image portrayed the monsters' perspective as humans loomed above them from the mountain. Those poor monsters, Midnight said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. So unmanly, Kirishima shook his head in disapproval. Angels cry from on high. Will they free us or will we die? No new friends come around. That's our life here underground, the monsters lamented, showing the mountain that trapped them. While on high sits our king. Listen, you might hear him sing, the monsters continued. So much blood, so much pain just to see the sun again. One day soon, freedom shall ring, so proclaims the mountain king, sang the king. So all might is the grieving king? No wonder they lost, Fo commented. How can you be sure that was all might? Kurogiri asked, skepticism in his voice. I'd know that voice anywhere, was the confident reply. Creepy, Danny and Fayola said in unison. Shigaraki turned to glare at them, causing Fayola to look away, but Danny held her ground, resulting in a silent stare down. Will you two knock it off? Bakugo hissed at them, irritation evident. Now the years have flown by, a child climbs up high. Will they return from the mountain, or will they surely die? The image showed a child with spiky blonde hair running up the mountain. Of course, I'd return from a dumb mountain, I'm not weak. Bakugo exclaimed at the screen, determination shining in his eyes. Bakugo, what are you doing there? Aizawa asked, raising an eyebrow. Kaken was probably just doing some mountain climbing. It's one of his favorite hobbies, Midoriya offered, trying to explain. What the hell, stalker? How do you know that? Bakugo yelled, shifting away from Midoriya. The tale of the underground, tonight we sing. A tale of fallen children and mountain kings. The image showed a giant hole, the entrance to the underground. Bakugo was seen looking at the hole from behind, his hair slightly blowing in the wind. I don't think I like where this is going, All Might said, concern etched on his face. The scene shifted to Bakugo's foot caught in a vine. Sit down, children, do not quail. Hopes and dreams will surely prevail. If you climb along this trail, you will hear the undertale. An image of Bakugo falling down the mountain appeared. No, everyone, excluding the villains, Danny, and Fayola gasped in unison. Fallen child and monster king. It showed Bakugo lying face down on the ground, having landed on a pile of golden flowers. Sit down, children, do not quail. Hopes and dreams will surely prevail. If one climbs along this trail, they will hear the undertale. The screen fades to black as the final notes of the song play in the background. The mood in the cinema was heavy, with some struggling to comprehend that they had just witnessed what seemed like their friend's demise. Bakugo expressed his frustration, feeling that he had not entered this situation just to meet an early end. Fayola, clearly annoyed, commented on his interruption, stating that she was beginning to feel a sense of sadness. This nearly provoked Bakugo into a heated response, but he was cut off. Danny reassured everyone that they hadn't truly perished, at least not yet. This sparked confusion among the group, prompting Danny to clarify that while there was a death, it had not occurred at that moment. Shigaraki confirmed the implication, and sarcasm filled the air as he questioned whether that was supposed to comfort him. Danny shrugged, grabbing a chocolate bar before continuing. They introduced a piece titled Lullaby for a Princess, which took place before and after the events of The Moon Rises. The heroes felt increasingly uncomfortable, while the villains seemed to grow more excited, leading Danny to cringe at the thought of how the heroes would react to villain Deku. A clear shot of the moon illuminated the night sky as the camera slowly descended to reveal a new castle. It zoomed in on an entrance where Katsuki emerged from a lit corridor, looking solemn with a light orange aura surrounding his hand. He sang about the cruelty of fate and the silence of harmony as he walked to a cliff's edge. Minoma made a comment about Bakugo being at fault, earning him a sharp elbow from Kendo. Toga expressed her empathy for Izuku, prompting Midoriya to reflect sadly on their past fight, feeling guilty even in this world. Momo inquired if Midoriya had been defeated. As Katsuki sang, he used his magic to surround the moon and set it, allowing the sun to rise again. All Might questioned how Midoriya could control the moon, to which Danny explained that both siblings could control the sun and moon, but it was easier for them to manage their respective celestial bodies due to their magic. As the sun rose, a blinding light filled the screen, revealing a new environment adorned with stars. Hawks noted the resemblance to a previous world, and Katsuki appeared in a room surrounded by holograms displaying various images. He gazed at one hologram with bittersweet fondness, recalling a time when a prince, shining like the sun, looked out over his kingdom and sighed, believing no one was as beloved as he. Sato remarked on Katsuki's continued arrogance in this universe, while the image shifted to reveal Izuku in a vulnerable position, tears streaming down his face as he remained hidden in Katsuki's shadow. The villains remarked on their predictions, while Kendo expressed concern for Midoriya. Izuku looked up from the shadows, anger and tears mingling in his eyes. The narrative revealed that Katsuki had noticed his brother's suffering but had not given him the love he deserved, leading to Izuku's unhappiness. Katsuki, shyly approaching Izuku's room, found his younger brother sobbing on the floor. When he attempted to help, Izuku's angry outburst pushed him away, and he slammed the door shut with his magic. Aizawa criticized Katsuki for his lack of social skills, suggesting that he needed to learn how to comfort someone properly. Shinso offered Midoriya a reassuring smile, which he returned. The narrative continued, emphasizing the destructive nature of fame and how the young prince failed to protect those who needed him most. After being shut out, Izuku processed the encounter, retreating into his mind where he faced his darker self. Uraraka expressed her disbelief at Midoriya's surrender, while Tsu noted that a serious fight with a sibling could be incredibly challenging. Katsuki, visibly shocked, turned away from Izuku's door, unaware of the turmoil inside. The screen shifted to show their battle, with Katsuki sustaining scratches while Izuku, in his nightmare form, appeared largely unscathed. They exchanged powerful magical punches, with Katsuki dodging some blows but unable to land a hit on his brother. As they distanced themselves, both brothers unleashed beams of magic at one another, their conflict intensifying. The beams met in the middle, clashing to create a powerful sphere, but neither side relented, continuing to unleash their magic. Midoriya was amazed by the sheer power on display. Danny noted that the music was not matching the intensity of the battle. Katsuki felt overwhelmed as Izuku's strength became too much to bear. In a final surge of energy, Izuku pushed the magic sphere closer to his brother, causing Katsuki to be sent hurtling into the castle. Katsuki crashed through the window and landed roughly on the floor, his back hitting a pillar. Midoriya winced, recalling the pain from his own past experiences. A crystal shaped like a six-pointed star fell beside the exhausted Katsuki. He glanced at it before turning his attention to Izuku, who was descending rapidly, preparing to deliver a decisive blow. Katsuki summoned his magic, lifting the gem along with a few others that had not fallen. As Izuku approached, he noticed the gems glowing. The last thing he saw was a flash of light before everything went dark. Just as Izuku was within reach, a burst of magic erupted from the gems, sending him flying backward. Izuku faded from existence, leaving behind a mark on the moon. When Katsuki opened his eyes and realized what had happened, he screamed into the sky, tears streaming down his face. He was horrified by his actions. Everyone around him was too shocked to respond. The scene shifted back to present-day Katsuki, standing at the edge of a cliff, gazing at the rising sun as he sang about the uncertain years ahead, never imagining he would face them alone. He expressed his longing for Izuku, wishing for the passage of time to be swift, as he turned to walk back to his castle. The camera zoomed from the Earth to space, finally revealing the moon with Izuku's marks still visible. Shinso questioned why the moon bore a large tattoo resembling Midoriya. Danny gestured that she would explain later, returning her focus to the screen. The scene shifted to a young Izuku, no more than 8 years old, peacefully sleeping in his bed. Katsuki, at 9, gently tucked the blanket around Izuku to keep him warm. The moonlight illuminated Izuku's room as he slept. The scene transitioned to an older Izuku, also tucked in, with the blanket being adjusted by a warm orange hue. The bed was then shown neatly made, empty of any occupant. The gentle refrain of "sleep" echoed as Katsuki lovingly laid the moon to rest, and the screen slowly faded to black. Many in the audience were moved to tears. Shinso asked Danny if she would answer his earlier question. She explained that Bakugo had not harmed Midoriya. Instead, the gems he used had sent Midoriya away to be imprisoned on the moon for 1,000 years. Hawks questioned how Midoriya would survive such a long time. Danny clarified that both Midoriya and Bakugo were essentially immortal due to their immense power, which surprised everyone. Kaminari tried to lighten the mood by commenting on how strange it was not to hear Bakugo yelling for so long. Gyro added that it was also surprising to discover he was not bad at singing. Bakugo reminded them that he had been forced to take music lessons as a child. Todoroki noted that Midoriya's vocals were better, to which Mina agreed. Bakugo challenged that he would have a sing-off with Midoriya once this was all over. Kirishima expressed his desire to join, and Kaminari suggested making it a battle of the bands. The rest of Class 1A collectively agreed, except for Midoriya, who was still recovering, and Bakugo, who was trying to dismiss the idea. Faola expressed her wish to join, but Ashido reminded her that she was not from their universe and did not attend UA. Ashido then proposed moving on to the next universe, and Danny agreed, warning that it had similar themes to the Deadpool universe. The scene shifted to Mustard, dressed in a uniform, ping a gun, followed by another agent preparing their weapon. It then cut to Mirko, who invited others to join her, playfully warning that she might shoot them. Present Mike questioned if she was a villain, but Danny clarified that Mirko was actually a good guy, though the world they were in was extremely violent. Mirko, dressed in a dark blue jacket over a white tank top and army pants, exuded a fierce energy. Twice was shown leading a group of armed agents, prompting Kaminari to comment on the overkill for just one person. Hawks cautioned against underestimating Mirko. Mirko then put away her gun and drew a long dagger, grinning with a hint of madness as she taunted her unseen opponents, who were hiding and preparing to attack. Miruko burst through the door, her eyes widening at the sight of multiple guns inside. She jumped slightly, then rubbed her hands together with a gleeful expression that sent shivers down many spines. Faola found it cool, while Bakugo smiled at the screen in approval. Miruko placed a bomb on the door that had locked behind her, activating it and stepping back just before an explosion rocked the entrance. The villains looked confused, peeking out from their hiding spots. Miruko emerged, wielding a massive gun and grinning at the frightened expressions of her opponents. The villains shouted in fear for their alternate selves, and a moment of tense silence filled the air. Miruko urged them to shoot faster, her excitement palpable as she declared her desire for chaos. Some sensitive viewers turned away, sensing the impending turmoil. As she began firing the gun, the scene turned chaotic. Muscular was hit multiple times, his face riddled with wounds. The surviving agents attempted to escape but were no match for Miruko's skill and unpredictability. Shigaraki watched in horror as his comrades fell, while Toga felt nauseous, and twice tried to comfort her amidst his own turmoil. The others averted their eyes, except for one who casually sipped a soda while watching the unfolding chaos. Miruko declared her intention to bring destruction to the city, pulling out a rocket launcher as she searched for a target. Shigaraki, the last agent in the room, tried to retreat but was spotted by Miruko, who aimed and fired. Midoriya, traumatized, lamented the fate of the villains. Bodies lay scattered throughout the building, blood splattered across the floors. Toga felt a mix of horror and fascination at the sight of the blood, struggling with her own feelings as she looked down at the carpet. As Miruko moved through the building, she exited toward the garage, leaving the audience to wonder about her plans. A body briefly blocked the camera, then shifted to reveal Miruko in a struggle with an opponent. Hawks grimaced at the sight, while Endeavor sarcastically questioned her role in the chaos. Miruko jumped into a car and drove off, leaving the blood-soaked building behind. Faola expressed her shock at the audacity of stealing a car, while Miruko reveled in her newfound freedom. She sped through deserted land, eventually halting the car and retrieving a detonator from her pocket. Turning her back to the base, she pressed the button, triggering a massive explosion that illuminated her in a brilliant orange glow. The wind from the blast tousled her hair as she laughed, not bothering to look back at the destruction she had caused. Fayola and Hawks exchanged glances, both in awe of the spectacle. Bakugo admitted it was impressive, and as Miruko's eyes opened again, the screen began to fade to black. Kaminari, thinking the video had ended, nudged Jairu to signal it was safe to look again. However, the screen lit up once more, revealing another agent holding a gun. Toga pointed out that Spinner was still alive, reigniting a spark of hope within her, though Dabi muttered that it wouldn't last long. Spinner, determined, began shooting wildly at Miruko, who danced around the room, effortlessly dodging the bullets. When the gunfire ceased, she stopped spinning and threw a dagger that struck Spinner, causing him to collapse. No one was surprised by this turn of events. Jairu punched Kaminari for his false alarm before covering her eyes and ears again. Spinner cursed his quick demise, wishing he could have defended his comrades. More agents descended the stairs, including Toga, Dabi, and Kai. Miruko flipped the light switch, plunging the room into darkness, causing the three to trip and fall. When she turned the lights back on, her smug expression remained. She urged the remaining agents to shoot faster, but they quickly became her targets as she fired from her elevated position. With a playful tone, she declared her desire for chaos once more, dropping her empty rifle, which struck Shirakumo, leading to his demise. Aizawa, Mike, and Midnight reacted with shock, calling out Shirakumo's name. Ashido, concerned, asked if Aizawa knew him, but the three remained silent, tears streaming down their faces as they processed the loss of their friend once again. Danny attempted to quiet the group, but it was clear that the weight of the situation hung heavily in the air, leaving everyone to grapple with their emotions. They growled in frustration, suspecting it was probably the boss. They contemplated causing chaos in the city to see how their leader would react. A shadowy figure with bright red eyes and a crimson outline pressed a button, and the scene shifted to Miruko, who was having a tea party with two unusual guests. One was a lifeless agent, and the other was Kamui Woods, who looked at her with clear confusion. Midnight felt a wave of nausea wash over her and decided to join the few others who averted their eyes. Fayola expressed her preference for a different storyline, mentioning a more entertaining alternate universe. Bakugo pointed out that both scenarios involved dangerous individuals. As an even larger army of agents rushed in, the emergency alarms blared. Miruko reached for a grenade on her belt, unpinned it, and threw it toward the incoming agents. The explosion took out a significant number of them. Although Shigaraki continued to watch the screen, he felt a pang of sorrow at witnessing his league being eliminated so ruthlessly. He recognized their past wrongdoings but still felt the sting of loss. A sword flew through the air, and Miruko caught it, expertly dispatching the remaining agents with ease. Fayola questioned why the agents were so ineffective in combat, noting their failure to hit Miruko despite having loaded weapons. Midoriya echoed her thoughts, pointing out that while Miruko was athletic, she wasn't faster than bullets. Danny shrugged, feeling no need to elaborate. Midoriya and Fayola exchanged understanding glances before returning their focus to the screen. The scene shifted again, revealing Miruko as the lead singer in a band alongside several others. She shot at the camera, causing the connection to falter. Bakugo exclaimed in disbelief, while Midoriya attempted to calm him down as the others either sat frozen or finally opened their eyes. Questions and complaints erupted from the group, prompting Danny to cover their ears and sigh heavily, feeling overwhelmed by the chaos. They thought to themselves about the challenges ahead, particularly with the villainous version of Deku. As the noise subsided, everyone settled down, eager for answers. Danny explained that this universe was complex, and they were too tired to provide extensive details, suggesting they move on with the list. The group reluctantly agreed. Danny announced the next universe, stating they would be exploring Undertale. They clapped their hands, signaling a transition. The scene loaded, revealing a body lying face down on the ground. The body twitched slightly, indicating that they were alive. Tokoyami questioned why Todoroki was present, recalling that Bakugo had fallen down a mountain previously. Danny attempted to explain but found that they couldn't speak, as if their mouth were sealed. Instead, they reassured Fayola that Todoroki was okay. Slowly, Shoto rose from a bed of golden flowers that had cushioned his fall. He looked up at the sky, assessing how far he had fallen, then glanced at his hands, pondering how he had survived the ordeal. He noticed an exit from the cave nearby. He walked through the new room, which resembled the previous one. He intended to pass through it quickly, but as he approached a patch of grass, a flower suddenly sprouted. The flower had yellow petals, for freckles on each side of its face, and green eyes. Shiro expressed his surprise, noting the flower's unusual appearance. Kaminari pointed out that they already had a talking bear mouse as their principal, so a living flower shouldn't be too shocking. Nizu, the principal, overheard and raised an eyebrow, prompting a nervous reaction from Kaminari and Shiro, who quickly clarified their intentions. The flower introduced itself as Flowy, cheerfully welcoming them to the underground. Fayola commented sarcastically on the flower's name, while Bakugu voiced his discomfort with the flower's cheerful demeanor. Midoriya defended Flowy, arguing that it wasn't fair to judge someone based on their voice. Aizawa, trying to distract himself from his thoughts about Shirakumo, contemplated this new world. Flowy, sensing their uncertainty, offered to show them around, which Uraraka appreciated. Shoto regarded the flower with an expressionless gaze, which some interpreted as unimpressed. Shiro remarked on Shoto's demeanor, while Todoroki himself remained skeptical of the flower's enthusiasm. Suddenly, the scene shifted for a brief moment, turning everything around them black and white. In that instant, a red heart appeared in front of Shoto, surrounded by white barriers in a square, before vanishing just as quickly. People noticed the glitch on the screen, but the few who did chose to ignore it. Flowy surrounded himself with tiny white petals, proclaiming that friends are made with love and that love is spread through petals. He encouraged everyone to catch as many as they could. His smile was wide, yet his eyes seemed devoid of warmth. Fayola felt uneasy, sensing bad vibes from him. Mineta expressed his discomfort, stating that Flowy seemed familiar but he didn't trust him. Suddenly, the screen shifted to the black and white scene that had glitched earlier. Shoto jumped back in surprise as a red heart formed in front of him, floating just above his chest. Minoma questioned what it was, and Danny explained that it was Todoroki's soul. She asked Minoma if he understood what a soul was. Kirishima grumbled in response, his voice a bit too loud, prompting Minoma to attempt a defense before being interrupted by Danny. There was to be no fighting in this room. Flowy sang wickedly, urging Shoto to run into the floating pallets. Hesitantly, Shoto followed the advice and touched one. Upon contact, the pallet vanished, but he felt a sharp pain not only in his finger but also in his abdomen. More pallets flew toward him, and with each one that struck, he felt increasingly fatigued. The glow from the floating heart in front of him began to dim. Shoto's eyes widened in confusion as he wondered what had been done to him. Feeling woozy, he realized he had underestimated the situation. Flowy, with a malicious grin, continued to hurl pallets at Shoto, who managed to dodge a few. Flowy taunted him, explaining that in this place, there was one rule: kill or be killed, a lesson Shoto would soon learn. Flowy reveled in the chaos, declaring that levels of violence were his kind of love. Spread when I slash and burn. Ashido expressed her disinterest in love, stating she didn't want it. Shoto attempted to escape Flowy but found himself trapped by a white barrier. He pushed against it, but it held firm, and jumping over it was not an option. Kendo remarked on the wickedness of the flower, while Shiozaki lamented the vile nature of something that should embody the sacredness of plants. Shigaraki inquired whether Flowy resided in Japan, to which Danny responded ambiguously, causing the villains to glare. Minoma muttered to himself about quirks not existing in this place. Flowy taunted Shoto, insisting that he was his best friend, which puzzled Todoroki. Uraraka pointed out that a true friend wouldn't try to harm him. Kirishima and Kaminari leaned closer to Bakugu, questioning him, but Bakugu threatened them, causing them to retreat, albeit still smiling. Flowy declared his intentions with fervor, his voice becoming increasingly erratic, revealing a sinister nature. As he sang about death, his expression shifted from a forced smile to a malicious grin. He surrounded Shoto with a circle of bullets that remained within the confines of the barrier, causing Shoto to panic as he searched for a way out, realizing time was running out as the circle closed in. Midoriya called out to Todoroki, his concern evident despite knowing their Todoroki was safe. The others shared his fear, while the villains waited eagerly for a moment of victory. Floey reveled in his impending triumph, but Shoto continued to search desperately for a solution. The scene faded to black as the bullets drew dangerously close. Toga expressed her frustration at not witnessing more action, and the others shared her disappointment at the cliffhanger. Danny apologized, understanding the sentiment, and announced a break, allowing everyone to refresh themselves. Danny stepped out to text a friend privately. Upon returning, she was surprised to find most of the Baku squad with instruments while the Deku squad held microphones. Fayola explained that they had just held a band battle, and Uraraka noted it was somewhat unfair since the others couldn't play instruments. Kaminari boasted about his skills, though Shoji pointed out he was still a beginner. Danny felt a twinge of regret for missing the performance and observed the teachers acting as judges, except for Aizawa, who had fallen asleep. The villains were engaged in a board game, with Shigaraki and Dabi arguing while Toga and Twice played Uno over a chessboard. Danny wondered how they had managed to summon such items, but before they could dwell on it, a letter appeared in her hand, which she crumpled, knowing its likely content. She snapped her fingers, making the summoned items disappear, and returned to her seat to continue the reaction. Danny introduced the next segment titled, Alternate Future. An adult Midoriya directed Todoroki to use his ice to create walls to shield civilians from debris while carrying 3 of them to safety. Todoroki complied, and Midoriya ensured everyone was alright before rushing back to confront the villain. Kirishima marveled at the sight of Midoriya and Todoroki, noting their impressive appearances. Uraraka admired Midoriya's heroic actions, while Jiru questioned the scar on his face. Danny shrugged, unsure of its origin. Endeavor watched with pride as he saw the hero his son had become. A villain, frustrated with the heroes, leaped from a hill he had created, causing the ground to shake upon landing. The uneven terrain added to the chaos, damaging buildings and creating a hazardous environment. All Might felt concerned for the strength of the villain. Midoriya assessed the situation, needing to devise a plan quickly. The villain surveyed the destruction, realizing the damage could have been worse without Todoroki's efforts to stabilize the buildings. Searching for Deku, he noticed he had vanished, only to hear 2 distinct voices approaching rapidly. It was too late to evade them, so he looked at his watch before smiling to himself. Aizawa mumbled to himself, wondering what was making Bakugo so smug. Suddenly, 2 feet launched into Bakugo's stomach, causing him to lose his breath. Bakugo exclaimed that he had gotten to him first, claiming victory. Midoriya pointed out that it wasn't a competition, and Bakugo rolled his eyes in response. Todoroki landed beside them, remarking that if Midoriya had been planning to join them all along, he was late. Midoriya sighed, noting Bakugo's competitive nature. Bakugo proudly declared that without competition, there could be no victory. Kirishima complimented Bakugo's style, while Ishido agreed, adding that Fayola's look was also nice. Fayola playfully insisted that she pulled it off better, to which Bakugo retorted that he looked way better than her. Bakugo then shifted to a serious tone, revealing that he had found some information on the Liberation Army. Fayola wondered what was wrong, and Bakugo explained that the Liberation Army might still exist in some form, possibly as copycats inspired by the originals. Shigaraki expressed his disdain for those individuals. Meanwhile, Hawks was mentally planning how to deal with these potential threats, while Endeavor appeared annoyed. Bakugo showed them his phone as proof of a conversation about meeting Tsukachi downtown. Midoriya told the others to wait for him before returning to check on the civilians he had saved. He asked the civilians if they were okay, and a few nodded. Fortunately, the villain's quirk had only caused minor damage, with 2 houses suffering significant roof damage. One homeowner complained about the hole in their house, and the others agreed. Midoriya reassured them that they and their families could stay at a nearby hotel and offered to cover the repairs, which they gratefully accepted. Hawks complimented Midoriya for his kindness, to which he modestly replied that he just wanted to make people smile. Someone from Class 1B asked if Midoriya was rich in the future, and another student joked that he would be very wealthy later on, but for now he was doing well. Midoriya walked back to Todoroki and Bakugo, who had just finished clearing away the ice. Bakugo impatiently remarked on how long it took. Todoroki suggested they leave, and outside the police department, investigator Tsukachi was checking his watch, wondering what was taking the heroes so long. All Might proudly commented on Tsukachi's unchanged appearance, while Midnight expressed her admiration. Just as Tsukachi was about to head back inside, he heard a loud engine roar. He turned to see a green sports car with stylish white streaks speeding toward him, and he stared in surprise. Inside the car, Bakugo yelled for Midoriya to slow down as he clutched the seats, while Midoriya focused on the road with a grin. Todoroki was asleep in the back seat. The car skillfully parked between two others, leaving drift marks on the road from the sharp turn. Bakugo exclaimed in disbelief at Midoriya's reckless driving, while Aizawa scolded him for his irresponsibility. Ida worriedly chastised Midoriya, expecting better from him. Endeavor, amused, questioned how his son could sleep through all the commotion. Kaminari asked if Bakugo was scared, but Bakugo dismissed him, causing Kaminari to hesitate. All Might defended Midoriya, stating that he wasn't going that fast, prompting AFO and Shigaraki to call him an idiot. Tsukachi watched as the three heroes exited the car. Bakugo yelled at Midoriya for his reckless driving, slamming the door in frustration. Midoriya reminded him to be careful since the car was leased. Tsukachi smiled as he approached the boys, and they exchanged greetings before heading to a cafe across the street. After some small talk, they grew serious as Tsukachi explained the situation. He detailed their suspicions about a new liberation army planning to erase quirks and how cases of people losing their quirks were related, indicating that the villains were more underground than ever. He mentioned that some arrested villains shared a tattoo, suggesting a connection. Fayola acknowledged the seriousness of the situation, while Shigaraki noted that the liberation had always been a threat. Awais expressed shock at the idea of erasing all quirks, and Aizawa reminded them that the Yakuza had attempted something similar, but these new villains were more significant. Todoroki asked how they could help, and Tsukachi explained that since they had been exceptional in their UA days and were in the top 20, no one would suspect them of being involved in an underground case. Class 1B, along with Vlad, was shocked at this revelation, while Class 1A congratulated them. Monoma questioned how they had achieved so much so quickly, and Danny clarified that this would take place about 9 years into the future. Todoroki asked for the plan, and Tsukachi inquired about their connection to the vigilante era. The three nodded, albeit hesitantly. Shinso questioned why they had a connection to a vigilante, given that they were heroes. Midnight directed her question to Aizawa, wondering why he wasn't present, and he confirmed that it was indeed his department. He muttered to himself about why it was always these three, and they exchanged offended glances, knowing he had a point. Fayola felt a sweat drop, sensing the direction the conversation was heading, while also feeling confused about her connection to them. Midoriya asked if they were in trouble. Bakugo looked at Tsukachi, as if questioning whether that was truly his main concern. Tsukachi clarified that he was more interested in being taken to their allies who could assist them. After some deliberation, the group agreed to the plan. Fayola whispered under her breath, expressing her surprise. Fayola was outside a bar, leaning against the wall with a guy sporting an undercut who was smoking a cigarette. Suddenly, Vlad exclaimed that she was the vigilante, leaving the others in shock. Realizing there was no point in pretending, Fayola decided to come clean about her identity. Bakugo stood up, pointing at her triumphantly, claiming he had suspected something was off about her. Fayola, taken aback, protested that she hadn't done anything wrong. Danny requested everyone to sit down so they could continue their discussion. Just then, Fayola noticed 4 familiar figures approaching. Upon recognizing Midoriya, Bakugo, and Todoroki, she shook Carriage to get his attention. Bakugo asked if he knew her, and Fayola confirmed that he was one of the classmates who had always followed them in middle school. She recalled Carriage mentioning an angry blonde and a quirkless boy with green hair from a different universe, and her eyes widened in realization as she turned to them. Before she could finish her thought, Danny quickly pulled her hoodie over her head, whispering that she would get it back if she stayed quiet. Fayola nodded absent-mindedly, but her excitement faded when she noticed the fourth person. Recognizing him as someone who worked with the police, she checked her surroundings before addressing Carriage, stating she needed to leave but would find him later. As she sprinted away, pulling her hoodie to cover her face, Midoriya marveled at her speed, asking if it was her quirk. Fayola explained that her quirk was called Air, which allowed her to manipulate air. Shigaraki, intrigued, asked if she would consider joining them, but Fayola politely declined and turned her attention back to the screen. The three boys activated their quirks, racing after her. Midoriya shouted for her to wait and, in a flash, positioned himself in front of her. Fayola collided with him and fell to the ground. She expressed her annoyance at his habit of doing that as she accepted his hand to help her up. The others caught up while Tsukachi was still running to join them. Fayola stepped back, addressing the group seriously, questioning if they were finally going to turn her in. Tetsu wondered if those were their hero names, but Danny clarified that they were just nicknames Fayola had given them. Todoroki assured her they needed her help, just as Tsukachi caught up, panting for breath. Fayola looked at the exhausted investigator and then back at Todoroki, sarcastically commenting on his convincing argument. She then complimented herself on her new look, noting that she liked it. Toga, excited, asked if she could have some of her blood, which confused Fayola. Bakugo interjected, explaining that they needed her help with an underground mission, as the Meta Liberation Army was back and posed a significant threat. Fayola was taken aback by the term airhead that Bakugo used, while Midoriya defended her. Bakugo shrugged off the comment, insisting he would say what he wanted. Fayola's expression shifted as she revealed she had been looking into the situation. She mentioned a previous accidental collaboration with Puppeteer, leading to her discovery of some crucial information. Tsukachi expressed disbelief that Puppeteer hadn't turned her in, and Danny clarified that Shinso was Puppeteer. Aizawa chimed in, expressing disappointment in Shinso for his actions. Shinso defended himself, claiming the events hadn't occurred yet in his timeline. Danny pointed out that it wouldn't happen in his universe anyway, and Aizawa nodded in agreement. Fayola explained that many UA graduates had refrained from turning her in, and Shinso owed her one. Midoriya asked if Shinso was aware of her findings, to which she confirmed they had planned to infiltrate a party happening soon. Bakugo pressed her for more details, and Fayola hesitated, avoiding eye contact as she tried to change the subject. She decided to call Shinso to inform him that they were involved in the mission. However, she expressed her distrust, specifically addressing Tsukachi, questioning how she could be sure they wouldn't betray her. Tsukachi assured her that they wouldn't throw her into jail without a trial first, which raised her eyebrows. Todoroki questioned if they would really stoop so low to betray a friend. Fayola reminded them that, despite their friendship, she still had reservations about Hero Society, especially since they had led the police to her. Kurogyari attempted to persuade her, suggesting that her ideals might align with theirs. Fayola countered that the League harmed innocent people, and she refused to be part of that. Tsukachi pleaded for her assistance, and after a moment of contemplation, Fayola agreed to help. The five of them decided to head to Midoriya's house. As they got into his car, Bakugo continued to yell at him, while Kaminari teased Bakugo, calling him Scaredy Cat. Bakugo defended himself, insisting he had self-preservation instincts unlike Midoriya. Kaminari persisted with his teasing until Bakugo hit him on the head, causing him to jump back. Ida, in his usual stern manner, reminded Midoriya to drive carefully. Midoriya promised to keep that in mind, laughing nervously. Meanwhile, Uraraka was getting dressed when she heard the door open. Mineta complained about missing out on something, but Danny expressed her disgust at his comment. Uraraka, panicking, insisted that they shouldn't assume anything, claiming it could just be friends visiting or something they needed from her. Ashido remained suspicious, and when Uraraka announced their arrival, she called out to them, confirming that Kaken, Shoto, Fayola, and investigator Tsukachi were there too. Ashido jumped up in victory, exclaiming her excitement. Midoriya and Uraraka had stopped their work, both frozen in surprise. Uraraka dashed downstairs to embrace her fiancé, planting a cheerful kiss on his cheek. She greeted the other boys warmly and wrapped Fayola in a friendly hug, expressing her joy at seeing her again after what felt like ages. Fayola playfully reminded her that it had only been a month, but Uraraka insisted it felt longer. The conversation quickly shifted as Uraraka excitedly asked Fayola if she knew about Shoto and Kami's recent engagement. Fayola feigned anger, claiming she had to hear the news from Mina instead of Shoto himself. Todoroki apologized, admitting he had forgotten to share the news and promised to make it up to her. Fayola accepted his apology with a smile. When Todoroki inquired about his own engagement with Kami, Danny casually reminded him that it had happened about a week ago, leaving both him and Endeavor in shock. The room erupted in disbelief, with Ashido, Hakagure, and some girls from Class 1B expressing their surprise. Tsukachi intervened, reminding everyone to focus as Fayola had already informed Shinso about the situation, who was on his way to help. Uraraka and Midoriya began preparing dinner while Todoroki was busy on his phone, and Bakugo and Fayola chatted. Shinso arrived with a knock before entering the room. Mike commented on Shinso's appearance, likening him to a purple version of Aizawa, but Aizawa himself disagreed. Midnight chimed in, pointing out the similarities in their looks. Fayola complimented Shinso, and he shyly accepted the praise. Uraraka playfully reminded Shinso that he was supposed to wait for someone to let him in, though she wasn't serious. Shinso waved at everyone and took a seat at the table, ready to join the conversation. All Might noted the resemblance between Shinso and Aizawa, which made Aizawa mumble something under his scarf. Uraraka and Midoriya settled at the large table, signaling that they were ready to discuss their plans. Tsukachi took a marker and prepared to outline their strategy. Fayola commented on the predictability of their situation, referencing how the videos often ended before the full story was told. Danny acknowledged this and mentioned they would move on to the next universe. Danny expressed anxiety about the upcoming universe, which prompted All Might to ask what it was. With a serious tone, Danny revealed it was villain Deku. The room filled with a mix of reactions, as the heroes felt uneasy about the implications. Danny reassured everyone that such a scenario could never happen in their reality, explaining that there were universes where heroes were villains and vice versa. However, they were now witnessing this happen to Midoriya. Midoriya felt a knot of unease in his stomach but steeled himself to face it. Toga bounced in her seat, causing Uraraka to subconsciously inch closer to Midoriya. The scene shifted to a normal school day, where middle schoolers in black uniforms listened to their teacher. The camera focused on Midoriya, who sat at his desk with clenched fists and a solemn expression, making the atmosphere feel heavy. Todoroki noticed the change in his friend's demeanor and asked if they were okay, but they remained fixated on the screen. Midoriya suddenly interrupted the class, voicing his frustration about justice and the guilty walking free. His outburst caught the attention of his classmates, and he locked eyes with his teacher, expressing his impatience with the system. Ida attempted to reason with him, but Midoriya challenged the notion of justice, pointing out the failures of the system. Dabi chimed in, questioning why heroes weren't doing more to hold villains accountable. Toga added her voice, lamenting the inadequacies of the authorities. Midoriya passionately declared that real people deserved protection, slamming his palm on the desk to emphasize his point. Fayola understood the sentiment he was expressing. As the imagery of heroes standing heroically flashed on the screen, Midoriya's anger was palpable. His teacher insisted that laws were meant for everyone, but the villains and Fayola collectively dismissed this notion. Midoriya felt conflicted, recognizing the truth in their words. He rebutted with a statement about the flaws in the legal system, prompting Dabi and Todoroki to glance at Endeavor, who avoided their gaze. All Might pressed Endeavor for answers, but he remained silent, confirming All Might's suspicions. The scene shifted to show images of victims, highlighting their anger and sadness. Shigaraki was depicted with tears streaming down his face as he looked at dismembered hands, while Toya's anger was evident as he attempted to attack a baby Shoto, with their mother shielding the child. The room gasped in shock at the unfolding drama. Todoroki appeared to feel guilty, which was likely the case. Toga was in tears as she remembered her crush from middle school, her emotions overwhelming her. Many averted their eyes from the scene, unable to watch. Spinner was angrily shouting at a group of people who wore malicious smiles, while others regarded him with cold indifference. He bore several bruises, while those he confronted remained unscathed. Fayola looked at the lizard villain with empathy, while Twice walked under the starry night sky, holding his pink slip, looking miserable. A clone attempted to comfort him, but Midoriya noticed that it was a clone and not someone close to him, leading him to conclude that Twice was truly alone. He felt a pang of sympathy for him. Fayola watched a park full of happy families from the shadows, feeling jealousy and resentment. Hawks asked her if she was okay, to which she replied that she was fine, masking her true feelings. Midoriya passionately questioned how they could simply accept the state of the world. All Might, with conviction, declared that such acceptance was not true. Danny recalled her first meeting with Midoriya but chose to remain silent. Midoriya continued, expressing concern for the families hiding in their homes, showing Fuyumi and Natsuo huddled together, tears streaming down their cheeks as they muffled their ears. The Todoroki family in the room avoided looking at anyone, feeling shame for the two on screen. Midoriya lamented the fear that kept families from walking the streets at night, emphasizing the many locked doors in empty neighborhoods. He turned to his teacher, demanding to know where the justice was, his eyes glowing with determination. His teacher responded, unimpressed, that the world was not simply black and white, and choices were not always clear-cut. Hawks agreed, wishing for a simpler world, while Midoriya smugly suggested draining the color from within until they could see right and wrong again. Aizawa pointed out the futility of such an idea. Midoriya expressed his frustration, stating that empty declarations would not change the situation. He criticized the system that allowed corporations to evade accountability when things went wrong. He noted that despite heroes' best efforts, collateral damage sometimes occurred, leaving victims to deal with the aftermath themselves. He questioned why the wealthy could escape justice, showing images of Endeavor and Hawks alongside other pro-heroes who had faced consequences for their actions. Hawks, confused, asked what Midoriya meant, while Danny apologized for being unable to elaborate. Midoriya continued, voicing his frustration over how high-priced lawyers often allowed their clients to walk free. The class began to rally behind him, standing from their desks and joining in his call for justice. Midoriya questioned where the victims were, showing civilians crying out in despair. He passionately demanded to know what good laws were if they could not punish those who broke them. Dabi shared his own doubts about the system. The heroes listened intently, recognizing the validity of Midoriya's points. They realized that while many issues plagued the world, there were aspects they could strive to improve. One of the girls in the class spoke out, criticizing politicians and judges for their failures. The class cheered her on, echoing her sentiments. Another boy suggested that instead of loopholes, they should allow for some form of payback to set things right. Shigaraki pointed at the screen, approving of the boy's perspective. Midoriya raised his fist, calling for everyone to stand up and say enough was enough. Uraraka acknowledged that despite being a villain, Midoriya still cared about the people. She admired that, recognizing he was still the same Midoriya who wanted everyone to be happy, though their methods differed. Midoriya nervously agreed with her, realizing how easily he could have fallen into a darker path. As the bell rang, Midoriya sprinted out into the streets, determined. The scene shifted to Bakugo, who looked genuinely terrified as the sludge villain attempted to overpower him. The students who had not witnessed Bakugo's attack watched in pity, feeling ashamed for their previous insensitivity. The scene transitioned to Midoriya desperately clawing at the villain in an attempt to save Bakugo. Kirishima recognized him and praised his bravery, while Mineta questioned why he would risk himself against such a dangerous foe. Midoriya explained that he had to try to save Kaken. Aizawa asked Bakugo how long he had been fighting off the villain before being rescued, to which Bakugo replied that it felt like an hour. All Might looked away, and gasps filled the room as the weight of the situation sank in. Bakugo focused intently on the screen, expressing his frustration. He declared that now was the time for justice. The footage displayed families hiding in their homes, shocked as Midoriya attempted to save Bakugo. Many were too afraid to walk the streets at night, their doors locked tight. All Might watched the scene unfold, his expression one of disbelief. Aizawa confronted All Might, demanding to know why he hadn't intervened. All Might sank deeper into his chair, visibly troubled. Midoriya questioned why they had done nothing, his voice filled with tension. Aizawa continued to press All Might, emphasizing that Bakugo had struggled for an hour while he remained inactive. Nizu observed the situation, noting All Might's exhaustion but defending him by pointing out that he had managed to save the day when Midoriya got involved. Bakugo, crossing his arms defiantly, took the blame upon himself, stating it was his fault for not being stronger. Kirishima attempted to comfort him, but Bakugo shot him a glare, refusing to accept any sympathy. AFO, watching from the sidelines, noted Midoriya's protectiveness over Bakugo and suggested that kidnapping him again would be a strategic move. Midoriya stood on the roof of his school, contemplating justice when he noticed Bakugo and his friends approaching. Distant voices echoed the question of where justice was. Fayola, spotting Carriage, greeted her friend excitedly, but Bakugo quickly commanded his friends to target Midoriya. Uraraka shouted in protest, but Midoriya reassured her that it was all in the past. Ida pointed out that Bakugo had indeed contributed to the bullying, drawing the attention of more students. Fayola felt disappointment wash over her as she questioned why Carriage would stoop so low. Midoriya attempted to defend Bakugo, but his words fell flat as Danny unexpectedly brought up a painful memory, shocking everyone present. All Might and Aizawa expressed their anger at Bakugo, who looked down in shame. Aizawa warned that a serious conversation awaited them after this incident, and the other students shifted away from Bakugo, except for Midoriya and Fayola. Fayola sensed something was off with Bakugo, who appeared to be having a panic attack. She felt helpless, unsure of how to intervene. Midoriya, feeling guilty, looked at Bakugo with concern. Bakugo, lost in his thoughts, clenched his fists and struggled to breathe, tears threatening to spill. Midoriya placed a comforting hand on Bakugo's back, providing silent support. Though Bakugo was unaware of the gesture, it helped him calm down. He felt he deserved to suffer for his past mistakes and believed he should accept whatever punishment came his way. Fayola and Midoriya exchanged glances, and she silently asked if he was okay. Midoriya offered a weak smile and nodded, grateful for her concern. The others around them were puzzled by Midoriya's compassion towards Bakugo, who was now subdued and not fighting back, leaving them disappointed. Midoriya shielded himself from the bright light as Bakugo activated his explosions, causing him to stumble backward and trip over the safety gate. The distant voices continued to sing, asking where justice was. Bakugo's eyes widened as he saw Midoriya's notebook fall to the ground. Midoriya, filled with fear, reached out as he began to fall, but no one was there to catch him. The students averted their eyes, unable to witness the scene. Midoriya's voice echoed the question of justice, and the atmosphere grew heavy as the realization set in. Momo tried to make sense of the situation, insisting that Midoriya couldn't be dead, as he had not turned to villainy. Toga and Uraraka cried, their hearts heavy with sorrow. Toga felt conflicted, disgusted yet heartbroken, while Uraraka buried her face in Ida's shoulder, seeking comfort. Ida embraced her, though he too felt a deep sadness. Danny reassured everyone that Midoriya would survive, though this incident might lead him down a darker path. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room as they realized their friend was not lost. Bakugo recognized Midoriya's attempt to comfort him. In the past, he would have pushed Midoriya away, but now he accepted the support. Danny spoke up, urging everyone to acknowledge Bakugo's change while still holding him accountable for his actions. Midoriya added that Bakugo's past behavior was not typical and that he had forgiven him long ago. Bakugo looked Midoriya in the eye, refusing to let him make excuses. Midoriya nodded and stepped back, understanding that Bakugo preferred some space. Bakugo finally admitted his remorse, acknowledging the need for forgiveness. It would be unmanly not to acknowledge that Bakugo had changed, Kirishima thought. Uraraka decided to forgive Bakugo but insisted he start treating Midoriya better. Ida nodded in agreement, supporting her stance. Kaminari noted that if Midoriya could move on, then so could they, especially since Bakugo no longer bullied outright. Siro shrugged, suggesting that Bakugo's behavior could still be considered bullying, depending on one's perspective. Aizawa stated he would determine Bakugo's punishment when they returned to school. Midoriya felt a wave of relief wash over him as the rest of Class 1A and most of Class 1B forgave him. The other pro-heroes chose to give him the benefit of the doubt. Bakugo, however, looked up, unsure of how to respond. He remained silent, reflecting on everyone's words. Deep down, he knew he deserved some consequences, and it was surprising he hadn't faced worse. The way Aizawa spoke indicated that expulsion was not on the table. Toga watched him with envy, wondering why he could get away with his behavior while she could not. With the situation settled, they were ready to move on. Midoriya and Bakugo both expressed their eagerness for the next chapter. Finally, Danny exclaimed in excitement. Fayola, confused, asked what was happening. Danny revealed they were about to continue with Music Meister. Fayola looked at her blankly, realizing she had missed the earlier episodes. Monoma chimed in, encouraging her to watch, assuring her she would love this universe. As the scene loaded, Music Meister was seen playing the pipe organ beautifully in what appeared to be his hideout. Fayola questioned who he was, scanning the screen for familiar faces. Mr. Compress introduced himself, dramatically standing to take a bow after finishing his piece, only to be met with silence. Offended, he wondered why no one was clapping, believing he had sounded amazing. The screen revealed that his audience was made of cardboard cutouts. Compress expressed his understanding of the disappointment, while Twice teased him, claiming he couldn't relate to such sadness. Kaminari playfully acknowledged the pun, though he quickly realized he was met with disapproving looks and tried to brush it off. Jair commented on the genius of Music Meister's plan, noting that his power was impressive. However, Meister expressed concern about one potential obstacle. A bat-shaped shadow loomed over him. Batman's voice echoed through the hall as he leaped down from the upper windows, announcing that Music Meister's show was about to face a long intermission. Ashido confidently declared that Aizawa was back with his one-liners, while Mike cheered, prompting Aizawa to sink back into his seat. Music Meister lamented Batman's constant interference, rushing back to his organ to start a song. The Baku squad cheered in excitement, but Kaminari whined in frustration. Smoke billowed from the pipes, engulfing the hall, and Batman struggled to evade it, ultimately losing track of Music Meister. Meister escaped on a motorcycle shaped like a musical note, singing about Batman's sidekick and utility belt, which Ashido wished she could own for its usefulness and style. The bystanders who heard the song fell into a trance, attempting to grab Batman as he swung through the city. One managed to catch his cape, pulling him down. The students cried out for Mr. Aizawa as the scene shifted to Arkham Asylum, where villains in asylum jackets joined in on the song, expressing how Batman drove them mad. Midnight noted the number of enemies Batman had, while Twice pointed out their likeness to the villains on screen, only to retract his statement. Dabi remarked on Batman's craziness, to which Shigaraki retorted, suggesting that madness ran in Dabi's family. Todoroki intervened, defending his family, but Shigaraki dismissed him. Then feeling exhausted, reminded them not to fight. Shigaraki pointed at Dabi, claiming he started it. Meanwhile, Music Meister drove freely through the city, with people clearing the way for him. Batman, having escaped the crowd, resumed his pursuit on foot, while everyone else joined in the song. Batman managed to grab onto Music Meister's vehicle, but it broke apart, allowing Meister to escape on his musical note. He changed outfits, revealing a costume reminiscent of a school band uniform. Monoma expressed his desire for the note bike, but Kendo pointed out that it didn't exist in their world and wouldn't match his theme. Monoma insisted he could have someone build it, regardless of the theme, while Kendo face-bombed in disbelief. Shigaraki questioned the necessity of the costume change, to which Compress replied that variety was essential for entertainment. It was different from the one he wore yesterday. Batman took the latter part of the Meister's note vehicle and used it to chase after him. Meister hopped from the highway they were on and balanced on an electrical wire, still moving forward. Batman followed closely behind. Kaminari remarked on the danger of the situation, while Midoriya expressed his excitement from his seat. Batman felt frustrated, realizing he had missed his chance to catch the Meister as he took off into the air. Some students gasped in shock as they noted Meister's ability to fly. He tore off his outfit to reveal a vibrant 90s disco-style look, complete with a bandana and an afro. Looking down, he noticed Batman staring up at him, which he found irritating. Froppy commented on the unkindness of calling him a flying rat, while Mike pointed out that Meister seemed quirkless. Midnight nudged Mike, and Aizawa rolled his eyes at the banter. All Might praised Batman for being a skilled hero who had put many villains behind bars. Shigaraki found the situation amusing, and the villains joined in a song, celebrating their antics. Meister flew around Arkham Prison, where he could be seen through barred windows, as more villains appeared to join in the singing. The villains sang about Batman being the world's greatest detective, while Meister, in yet another costume change, continued to evade Batman, who was now running on foot. The villains performed a choreographed dance, singing about how Batman foiled their evil schemes. Meister zapped the entrance to the prison before flying away, allowing the villains to escape. Twice cheered for Compress, while Kai sang from his cell about Batman's resourcefulness. Midoriya wondered when the villains had ended up in jail, and Danny shrugged, suggesting they were captured when the music Meister stopped controlling them. Overhaul, lifting weights in the gym, commented on Batman's toughness, which prompted a sarcastic remark from Toga about Overhaul's strength. Compress laughed, teasing Overhaul's current state. Gang Orca was fighting off a horde of escaped prisoners but was quickly overpowered. Shirokamo tried to help but was also overwhelmed by the criminals. Aizawa and All Might questioned why Batman was referred to as the top cat, to which Danny replied matter-of-factly. The villains continued to sing about Batman driving them bats, and the scene shifted to Meister and other villains and heroes alike singing the final lines of the song before the screen cut to black. Aizawa complained about the irrationality of other heroes envying Batman, while Mike poked fun at him. Aizawa remained silent, prompting Zero to tease him further. Monoma stood up, expressing his frustration that it couldn't be over yet. Danny apologized as they prepared for the next universe. The next chapter began with an announcement from Danny, who clapped their hands. Izuku was sitting on his bed at home, writing something on his laptop with one arm, the other in a cast. Monoma expressed surprise that Midoriya hadn't sustained broken bones sooner, while Kendo speculated that his injuries were likely from living in the villain Deku universe. Fayola, curious about their casual discussion of Midoriya's injuries, asked if this was a common occurrence, to which most of Class 1A replied affirmatively, causing Midoriya to shrink into his seat. Midoriya read aloud what he was typing, a letter to himself about being true to who he is. All Might encouraged him, while Uraraka wondered why he was writing a letter to himself. Todoroki and Tetsu were impressed by his typing speed, especially with one arm. Midoriya rambled on about confidence and being himself, but his fast-paced speech made some of his classmates anxious. Fayola jokingly told him to breathe, as the others watched in a daze. The villains were less interested, except for Toga, who dreamily watched the screen, and AFO, who wanted to gather information. Midoriya continued to roleplay a scenario where he awkwardly introduced himself to Uraraka at a jazz concert, causing her to blush while he hid his face in embarrassment. Uraraka reassured him that it was fine since it wasn't really him. Midnight shook Mike excitedly as she watched the two, trying to contain her excitement. Jaira questioned why Midoriya had referred to Uraraka as Ochako Baku, prompting everyone to look at Danny for an explanation. Danny clarified that they were siblings. They nodded. Todoroki observed that their friend definitely overthought things more than Midoriya, which made him mumble more. Kaminari playfully suggested that he thought Midoriya might have a crush on Ochako, mimicking Midoriya's tendency to use the word, like, excessively. Kirishima elbowed him, believing it was unmanly to expose someone's feelings, no matter how obvious they were. Toga dreamily sighed, expressing that Izuku, she, and Ochako could be a couple in this universe while holding onto Dabi's arm, who seemed indifferent. Dabi pointed out that Izuku had been too nervous to speak to Ochako, worrying about his hands getting sweaty. In the end, he had only made them warm instead. The screen displayed Izuku's disappointed smile as he stared at his warm hands, causing Fayola and Jairu to stifle their laughter. Fayola apologized for laughing, but her struggle only made Jairu give in as well. Ida reprimanded them, urging them to stop laughing at a friend's misfortune. The two girls calmed down. Inko entered the room, casually crossing her arms as she leaned against the door frame, and music began to play. Bakugo yelled in frustration, while Aizawa muttered under his breath. Danny lazily explained that many of the scenarios were musical-themed, so they better get used to it. Inko moved to sit beside Izuku on the bed, asking if he had been writing letters to himself. She encouraged him, noting that those letters were important for building his confidence. Izuku, sounding dejected, admitted he had started one. Inko stood beside him, pulling him into a side hug and encouraging him to adopt a more optimistic outlook. The students and teachers watched the screen with concern, wondering what was troubling Midoriya. Bakugo felt a pang of guilt as he noticed how far Midoriya had come from his alternate self. Izuku reflected on his progress and wished his other self good luck. Inko playfully mocked a macho stance, urging Izuku to see the world differently and suggesting he ask other kids to sign his cast to lift his spirits. Danny quickly shifted the topic, mentioning another villain universe separate from the last one they had watched. Uraraka and Bakugo protested, while Midoriya asked how many villain universes existed. Danny explained that there were far too many to count, surprising All Might, who couldn't believe they weren't the original versions of themselves. Danny decided to end the conversation before it spiraled further, waving dismissively and urging everyone to continue. AFO remarked on Danny's poor job of informing them, but Danny brushed it off and clapped their hands to get started. The news report began, discussing the recent attacks on UA, the hero killer, and a mass kidnapping case, leaving the heroes shocked at the chaos in that universe. Present Mike turned off the television, revealing that he, Toshinori, Nizu, Aizawa, and Torino were in the hospital, with Aizawa and Torino in beds. The students felt uneasy seeing their teacher injured again. Tsu quietly asked what had happened, and Aizawa casually remarked about the media's harsh treatment. Nizu inquired about Aizawa's condition, who explained that the students were safe, but Tora-san had suffered severe injuries. The camera zoomed in on Aizawa, showing bandages covering his eyes. The heroes grew more concerned as Aizawa hesitated before revealing that it was uncertain if he would regain his sight. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed as Toshinori slammed his fist into a wall in frustration, causing gasps from the audience. Aizawa looked down, fearing the reactions of those around him. Bakugo stood up, demanding to know who was responsible. Fayola calmly explained that a villain had attacked during a training camp led by Deku. Bakugo shouted in anger, while Danny noted that at least Aizawa was okay in their universe, despite his previous opposition to Midoriya. Siro remarked that Midoriya was a dangerous villain, and Kaminari added that he was the worst of the worst. They noticed Midoriya shrinking in his seat, looking down, and reminded everyone that this was only true in that universe. He was one of the greatest, kindest people Deku knew. Despite the compliment, Deku felt a pit in his stomach. He stood for a moment, leaning against the wall with one arm, his hand clenched into a fist. He blamed himself for not being able to stop the villain back then, but Nizu interrupted his thoughts. "Oh no, you couldn't," Nizu said in his usual cheerful tone, though his aura suggested this was not a happy moment. "You couldn't see him as a villain. No matter how much rage you felt or how long you remained in that form, you knew you couldn't fight him as both a hero and a villain." Toshinori stood away from the wall, fists clenched and back slightly hunched, contemplating Nizu's words. His moment of reflection was cut short by a ringing from his pocket. "I wonder what the call is about," Endeavor said. He took out his phone and answered without greeting the caller, who immediately got to the point. Toshinori's eyes widened in shock. "What did you say?" "You found the villain's hideout," he exclaimed, the caller confirming the news. "How did they find our hideout anyway?" Toga wondered aloud, but received no response as everyone else was either as clueless as she was or unwilling to share information with the villain. "Principal," Toshinori said, his voice steady and serious. Nizu looked at him, waiting for the number one hero to continue. "It may be true that I couldn't fight him as both a hero and a villain, but his actions cannot be overlooked. Next time I meet him, I will make it clear, I am here," he declared, transforming into his muscular form as he spoke those famous words. One of his irises shone a bright blue, emphasizing the sincerity of his statement. I just realized. How come he looks skeletal? He hasn't fought all for one and still has his strength, so what gives? Kirishima asked. Yeah, Kirishima is right. He only became like that because of his match with him, right? Zero added, tilting his head in all for one's direction. Danny sighed. I can't disclose that information, but I can tell you it has something to do with that secret they are hiding, she said, pointing at All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo. Many curious looks were exchanged, but no one pressed further, knowing they would evade the question. This made Midoriya anxious as he sensed Todoroki's and Uraraka's concerned gazes. Bakugo avoided eye contact, while All Might nervously dodged the stares of everyone around him. The unspoken question lingered in their minds. Why wouldn't they say anything? Did they not trust them? Meanwhile, FO and the other villains reveled in the negativity surrounding them. Deku was in the lab with Dr. Ujiko, writing in his notebook. His villain costume resembled that of All for One, featuring a black suit with a tie and silver headgear that covered his neck and ears, wrapping around the back of his head, though that part was hidden by his black hair. Shigaraki glared at the Midoriya on the screen, anger boiling within him as he scratched his neck, a habit he thought he had overcome. Dr. Ujiko! Midoriya called out. You know him? Uraraka and Ida asked. He's the doctor who diagnosed my quirk, he said, stopping short of finishing the thought. He's my childhood doctor, he added. Ida accepted this, but Uraraka scrutinized him, suspicion evident in her gaze. I'm just upset that my old doctor is working for All for One in that world, he admitted. He also works for him in your universe, Danny revealed. Midoriya's eyes widened in disbelief at this revelation. Bakugo focused intently on the screen. He's also the uncle of an old friend of ours, Bakugo disclosed. Midoriya's eyes widened further as he recalled that detail. They wondered what had happened to their childhood friend with the red wings, who had gone missing all those years ago. Nowadays, it's hard to find people who still use manual methods of taking notes, Dr. Ujiko remarked while examining his data on the Nomus. Deku turned to face the doctor. It's a habit of mine. So how's your experiment? He asked with a smile. Ujiko chuckled. Don't underestimate a man in his hundreds, kid, but compared to mine, he turned to face Deku. Yours is way more interesting, he said, a hint of madness creeping into his voice. Ujiko was heavily shadowed, illuminated only by the light from the experiments, revealing a vague outline of his mustache and glasses that glowed a sickly green. Many shuddered at the sight of the madman. Behind the doctor, a plethora of UA students were encased in large glass tubes, surrounded by a dark, gooey substance. Ujiko laughed again. If they thought they were scared before, it was nothing compared to the bone-chilling fear that gripped them as they stared at the screen, mouths agape and pupils dilated. Midoriya did this? Monoma asked, his voice trembling. Danny nodded. How could he? All those students. Midnight gasped, barely able to speak. Izuku is such a great villain, and he looks so good here, though he would look better if he were bleeding. Toga exclaimed. Fayola snapped out of her shock, looking at the blonde girl with deep concern. What was wrong with her? This kid is amazing. If only he had become a villain, Ifo said. Danny shot him a glare while Shigaraki glowered at the frozen freckled student. He wasn't so special. He could do better, and in fact, he was better. Master should be paying attention to him, not that All Might wannabe. All Might and many others found themselves speechless at the sight laid out before them. You gave one to Tamura while secretly keeping 20 for yourself. You sure are bad sometimes, kid, he complimented the young villain. That brat, that traitor. If I could get my hands on them, I'd make them wish they were never born. Shigaraki seethed, his red eyes glowing with hatred. That's right, Tamura, let that hatred grow stronger inside you. Your body needs to be the perfect vessel after all, Ifo thought to himself. Deku took his notebook and walked up to stand beside the doctor, continuing to write as he recalled the lesson learned. There are never enough specimens, he reminded himself. Fayola felt her anger rise. She knew it was pointless to get so invested in a world where she had no influence, but this was just wrong on so many levels. It was hard for anyone not to let their emotions get involved when witnessing something like this. Danny explained how the villains created Nomus, noting that Deku had managed to capture many UA students, primarily because the best quirks were found there. Hawks remained unfazed by the villains, though he was disgusted by the use of children. Wajiko remarked on the progress made with an unusable quirk, expressing surprise at how close they had come to perfection in such a short time. He recalled his sensei's words, "Nothing is useless if there's at least one person who sees its worth." He looked at his experiments, acknowledging that he could only harness 30% of its full power. Midoriya's eyes widened in realization. 30%? Does he have one for all in that universe too? All Might pondered, recognizing the skill of this villain who had mastered the quirk in such a brief time frame. Text appeared on the screen, detailing quirk number 3, AFO. Absorb for Occupy, a living parasite. The information explained that liquid-state parasites within the carrier's body enhanced their physical and recovery abilities, allowing them to control infected targets and even grant them quirks, with varying success rates. FO complemented the power of the quirk, while Danny rolled her eyes in annoyance. Uraraka frowned, noticing the dark and lifeless quality in the other Deku's eyes. Ashido questioned why AFO had given him a quirk when he already possessed a powerful one. Fayola glanced at Midoriya, wondering about the implications. Danny clarified that he had been born quirkless, prompting gasps from the students, including Toga, Compress, Twice, and Spinner. Kaminari expressed disbelief, while Momo corrected him, stating that the accurate term would be reality, as this world mirrored theirs with some differences in roles. Danny hesitated before explaining that Midoriya was a special case across the multiverse, often born quirkless, including in this reality. All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo exchanged incredulous looks, unable to believe what they had just heard. Fayola thought to herself that she had suspected as much. Shigaraki and AFO, already aware of this fact, remained unfazed. Danny assured them that their questions would be answered as they progressed, urging them not to bombard her or Midoriya with inquiries. The majority of the audience nodded in understanding. The scene shifted to AFO calling out to Ujiko from behind a door, prompting concern among the heroes. AFO noted that they had found Tamura's location and anticipated that guy would come, stating he would greet him personally. Hawks whispered a question about who that guy was, while Ujiko expressed shock at AFO's boldness given his condition. The scene cut to Deku, who mockingly read the title of a book, How to Destroy Hero Society, before setting it down. He calmly declared that things were going as planned, wearing an excited grin. The pro-heroes had just broken into the League's hideout, catching the villains off guard due to the number of heroes present. This provided an opportunity for Kamui to capture them. Kirishima noted that Bakugo had also been kidnapped, spotting his friend next to All Might, both looking equally shocked. Compress remarked that he was not surprised, as Bakugo had always had the potential to be a villain. Dabi complained about a past encounter, while Twice teased him, prompting a groan in response. Shigaraki internally vented about Bakugo's refusal to join them previously and how the heroes had ruined a perfectly good wall, lamenting that money didn't grow on trees. He felt better remembering the Master's plan to capture Bakugo again but kept his thoughts to himself. All Might demanded to know where they were hiding, but silence met his inquiry. He called out to Shigaraki, his eyes hidden in shadows, creating an intimidating presence despite his strained smile. Shigaraki struggled against Kamui's grip, feeling frustrated and angry. He yelled in frustration towards All Might, unleashing a black, goo-like substance that erupted around him. Both Shigaraki and All Might widened their eyes in surprise at the sudden manifestation. Deku emerged from the black substance, declaring his hatred for All Might, mirroring Tamura's sentiments. All Might, taken aback, realized the words were not directed at him but felt a deep sense of despair at hearing them from this version of Deku. Midoriya couldn't comprehend how his counterpart could express such feelings, while his friends wore expressions of sadness, recognizing that this was not the Midoriya they knew. Bakugo's resolve returned as he ran toward Deku, stopping just inches away, both of them glaring intensely at each other with clenched fists. The atmosphere felt heavier around them. Bakugo was the first to break the looming silence. Uraraka felt torn. She didn't want to watch, Yet she needed to know what would happen in this fated battle between rivals. Bakugo questioned if Deku was truly who he claimed to be, his expression softening in disbelief at the situation unfolding before him. Danny provided context, noting that this was their first encounter since Midoriya had disappeared in middle school. Deku continued to stare back at Bakugo, who was growing increasingly desperate. He exclaimed that Deku had been on the news, recalling the fire that had engulfed his home. The urgency in Bakugo's voice revealed his struggle to comprehend the reality before him. Several others gasped at the mention of the fire, and Midoriya, panic rising in his chest, asked if his mother had survived. Danny regrettably shook their head, confirming the worst. Tears welled up in Midoriya's eyes as he processed the devastating news. Bakugo, in his own rough way, urged Midoriya to think clearly, reminding him that Aunt Inko was still alive and that this was merely another universe, not the truth. Surprisingly, Bakugo's words seemed to calm Midoriya, who reassured himself that his mother was safe. Kirishima sighed, holding a smile, realizing that Bakugo needed to improve his comforting skills. Just as Deku began to explain further, All Might interrupted, charging at him with urgency. A few heroes and students sighed in exasperation at the interruption. Deku laughed, a hint of venom in his voice as he backed away from the heroes, snapping his fingers. In an instant, black goop erupted from Bakugo's mouth, catching everyone off guard as it enveloped him. Bakugo struggled against it, but his efforts proved futile. He briefly touched his throat before pulling his hand away, watching helplessly. Midoriya declared that he was there to rescue them as the goop began to ensnare the rest of the league. Ashido commented on the unpleasant appearance of the substance, while Toga pretended to GG. Compress remarked on Kurogiri being a more preferable means of travel, to which Kurogiri expressed gratitude. Bakugo attempted to speak through the sludge, but Midoriya reassured him that they would meet again soon. Observers were puzzled by the relationship dynamics between Midoriya and Bakugo, with many expressing confusion over Midoriya's feelings. Danny explained that they could only access limited information, which rarely included emotional context. All Might finally noticed Bakugo's predicament and panicked, reaching out in a desperate attempt to save him. Unfortunately, he was too late, witnessing the last remnants of the teleportation goop vanish. Class 1A found it difficult to watch, reminded of their inability to save their friend, and the revelation of Midoriya as a villain only intensified their distress. Tsuyu wondered if the rescue mission would still proceed without Midoriya. Silence fell over the room as the villains, except for Deku and his allies, disappeared. Deku commented on their failure, leaving All Might speechless. All Might clenched his jaw, trying to calm himself as he considered the implications of a fight. Midoriya challenged All Might, suggesting they could battle if All Might was willing to abandon the lives he aimed to protect. Midnight speculated on Midoriya's motivations, while Shinso suggested it might be a taunt. A bright flash of light outside caused alarm, and a beam of fire shot into the building, narrowly missing All Might. Fayola rhetorically questioned the necessity of the property damage, while Endeavor yelled at All Might from outside, urging him to focus on the task at hand. Todoroki felt relieved to see Endeavor providing backup. All Might thanked Endeavor before leaping away to confront the situation, leaving Endeavor to handle the chaos. Endeavor addressed Deku, expressing gratitude for taking care of his son, Shoto, before preparing to engage in battle. The screen faded to black, prompting cheers from the heroes, though Endeavor's focus remained on the proud smile of his son. Dabi criticized Endeavor's choice of words, calling it the lamest thing he had ever heard. Shigaraki joined in, rolling his eyes at Endeavor's response. Danny suggested they save their thoughts on this universe until they finished their current task. This story takes place in a universe where the Christian narratives are considered true, and the characters are drawn from those tales, as Danny explained. Shiozaki interjected, asserting that Christianity is not a myth. Momo added that many people still hold onto their beliefs. Danny acknowledged the sensitivity of the topic, apologizing for any offense caused despite the differences in their worlds. He then inquired about their beliefs, to which a few shook their heads. Shiozaki smiled, accepting the apology. AFO, curious about the implications of their beliefs, asked which story they would be discussing. Danny responded with disdain, stating it was the story of Moses, prompting applause from the group. The scene shifted to a large crowd quietly chanting in the background as the imagery on the screen displayed a beautiful kingdom surrounded by the hot yellow sands of Egypt. The camera zoomed in on a woman collecting water, and the chanting grew louder, filling the peaceful atmosphere. The woman appeared calm until surprise overtook her features as she declared that since the pharaoh refused to free her people throughout Egypt, she would send pestilence and plague into his house and bed. She stepped back in alarm as dozens of frogs emerged around her, causing her to flee toward the castle in fear, passing two men who were enjoying a meal. One of the men attempted to sip from his chalice, only to be met with a swarm of ants that spilled out, along with the bread on his plate. Present Mike fainted at the sight. Aizawa reassured the group that Present Mike would be fine. The screen displayed cattle collapsing, men waking up to swarms of insects, and locusts attacking the pharaoh's guards. Kurogiri noted that it was no surprise AFO was the pharaoh, while Toga pointed out that he was holding a child who resembled Tamura. Spinner remarked on the odd focus, noting the child looked at least 8 years old. As the misfortunes befell the kingdom, FO watched in worry as his people suffered. In the distance, atop a high mountain, a man with white hair and red eyes observed AFO's kingdom solemnly. FO gasped in disbelief at the sight. Shigaraki questioned who the man was, while Bakugu noted the uncanny resemblance to the handyman Midoriya squinted, finally recognizing the man and looking toward All Might, who was fixated on the screen. Danny explained that the man's name was Yoichi and that he had connections to Midoriya, All Might, and unfortunately, AFO. Yoichi's voice echoed as he sang about once calling AFO brother and wishing to make him laugh. AFO's gaze remained on the destruction unfolding in his kingdom. The imagery intensified, showing statues catching fire and debris causing smaller buildings to ignite. The people of Egypt were depicted cowering in fear, seeking comfort from their loved ones. AFO sat on his throne, maintaining a poker face despite the unsettling situation. As the plagues worsened, his anger grew, feeling the weight of betrayal. He questioned why his brother would call down another blow, picking up one of his guardsmen and handing him a spear in frustration. The two men from earlier were seen trying to concoct a potion to cure the plagues, but AFO barged in angrily, flipping their table in a fit of rage before storming out, leaving them to deal with the mess. Danny commented on AFO's lack of charisma, drawing curious looks from the heroes, who shared her sentiment. AFO pondered how his brother could come to hate him so, feeling genuinely hurt as he stared at Yoichi's distant figure. All Might quietly remarked that it was not hard to feel animosity toward AFO. Only Aizawa heard the words spoken. A voice echoed, declaring a swarm and a horde would be sent forth. The speaker resolved to harden their heart, regardless of the cost. Uraraka, along with a few others, closed their eyes at the sight of the suffering people on the screen, afflicted by the plagues unleashed upon them. She thought sadly about the innocent lives caught in the turmoil, wondering why they had to endure such pain. Danny interjected, explaining that the people in that universe were not entirely innocent, as they had enslaved the speaker's kin. Uraraka looked shocked, unable to comprehend how Danny knew her thoughts. AFO proclaimed he would never let their people go, and Fayola whispered in frustration about his stubbornness. Bakugu echoed her sentiments, expressing his disdain for villains. The screen went black, and Shigaraki glanced at his master, who remained fixated on the display. There was no emotion on his face, but a slight lift at the corner of his lip hinted at something deeper. Shigaraki felt a twinge of discomfort at the resemblance he bore to the man on screen. Mineta asked how the story concluded, and All Might recounted that Ramesses eventually relented and freed Moses' people, only to reconsider and attempt to attack them, but divine intervention stopped him. Danny clarified that Moses represented the new guy, while Ramesses was akin to AFO. Shigaraki, sounding annoyed, urged them to move on, and Danny agreed, ready to transition to the next universe. Midoriya began to ask about AFO's brother, but Danny reminded him of their audience, filled with peers, mentors, and villains. Bakugo looked ready to confront Midoriya, while All Might's expression turned pale. Midoriya nervously met the gaze of the world's greatest villain and instinctively recoiled. Uraraka placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her concerned look silently asking if he was okay. He sighed and offered her a soft smile before glancing at AFO one last time. Danny shifted the topic, introducing the next story titled, Midnight Frenzy. In this world, everyone attended a boarding magic school. Jaira's eyes sparkled with excitement at the thought of a magic school. Danny explained that while many universes featured magic schools, this one was unique due to its monarchy, with some students being royalty. Outside, beneath an orange sky, stood a grand school resembling a castle, surrounded by vast lands filled with gardens, fields, and smaller buildings. A stadium was even present within the school grounds. Fayola sat upright on her bed, her head resting against the headboard as she stared blankly at the ceiling. She asked Danny if she was finally the main character, and upon receiving confirmation, she smiled and quietly celebrated her newfound importance. Shinso remarked that for a vigilante, she seemed eager for attention. Fayola shrugged, explaining that there were no consequences for her in this universe, and it would be disappointing to be brought here only to watch others without playing a significant role. Aizawa noted that her clothes were the same as before, suggesting she was trouble in her own world. Endeavor commented on her potential for chaos, but Fayola defended herself, insisting she did more good than harm. Turning to the window, she watched the sun slowly descend behind the clouds, its fading light casting a beautiful array of orange and purple hues across the sky. Though the view did little to alleviate her sadness, it added a touch of color to her otherwise bleak surroundings. She sighed and rose from her bed, brushing off her witch uniform before wandering through the expansive corridors. As she passed various rooms, she felt a pang of regret at the thought of not being able to spend time with her friends anymore. Approaching a larger door marked with Nizu's name, her sorrow morphed into bitterness. Nizu wondered why she seemed to harbor negative feelings toward him. Danny explained that in this universe, Fayola had been expelled for attempting to expose him during a significant school event, believing him to be the mastermind behind troubling occurrences at the school. All Might expressed concern, fearing the implications of an evil Nizu. Danny reassured them that he was not evil, prompting a collective sigh of relief from the pros and a few students, with Kaminari and Ishido being the loudest. Fayola felt a surge of sympathy for her other self, realizing the risks taken for seemingly nothing. Danny reassured her, noting that the other person had been acting suspiciously. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Fayola's mind, and a wicked smile spread across her face as she dashed to her room. Shuji, sensing trouble, wondered what she was planning. Once in her room, Fayola quickly retrieved a piece of parchment from her nearly empty desk shelf and began to scribble a letter with the ink and feather pen already set out. After finishing, she rushed out, nearly tripping over her suitcase, and slid the letter under Nizu's office door before bursting into another room a short distance away. Todoroki, startled from his writing, looked up at her. He was busy composing a letter, likely for his family. He questioned why she wasn't resting, reminding her that she needed to leave by sunrise. Aizawa chimed in, stating that it was unreasonable for her to be up. Fayola feigned hurt, pretending to be offended by his words, but he quickly insisted that he didn't mean it that way. With excitement, she declared that they were going to break everyone out for a night of fun, tossing casual clothes onto his bed. Todoroki's eyes widened in alarm as he jumped up, knocking over his chair. Siro commented on how distressed Todoroki looked, while Endeavor criticized the situation, worried about his son being influenced negatively and needing rest to perform his best. Todoroki, hearing his father's comment, asked Fayola if she wanted to be friends, to which she happily agreed. His surprise at her response was evident, and he questioned her motives. Fayola explained that she wanted to enjoy one last night with everyone before leaving, and she closed the drawer after retrieving one last piece of clothing. Mike dramatically advised Todoroki not to involve the staff in her plans, but Fayola smirked, suggesting it would only be for one last time. Todoroki, shaking his head in amusement, rhetorically asked why he always got caught up in her schemes. Fayola replied that they were great opportunities to annoy his father. Endeavor, bitterly smiling, reflected on the fact that at least some versions of him succeeded as a father. Fayola then whispered to Todoroki to help her rally everyone by moonrise. She wondered if it would be easier to use magic to bring them along, but Danny pointed out the issues with that idea. Fayola defended herself, claiming it wouldn't be wrong since they all knew each other, but Midoriya and Uraraka disagreed, leaving her to shrug it off. Fayola moved silently through the empty halls, her footsteps barely making a sound. She opened a window at the end of the corridor and climbed out, using her acrobatic skills to reach the roof. Holding onto a metal pole for balance, she watched as the moon rose and the stars began to shine, the gentle light reflecting in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, music began to play, and she joyfully exclaimed about the unexpected musical moment. As she hopped down to a lower roof, she sprinted along the edge, singing about diving into dreams. Meanwhile, Aizawa was finally finishing paperwork, preparing for some much-needed rest, though Kaminari doubted he would get any. Momo defended Aizawa, claiming he could sleep through anything, leading to a playful bet between them. Fayola spotted a window further down the hall and hung upside down from the roof to open it, grinning as she succeeded. She entered Ishido's room, urging her to join the fun. Ishido hesitated, unsure about accepting the tempting offer. Observing her on-screen self, Ishido gushed about how cute she looked without her usual features, while her friends complimented her appearance. Fayola and Ishido exchanged excited words, high-fiving as they prepared to join the others. They peeked out to see a group of kids sneaking through the halls, ready for the adventure that awaited them. Fayola smiled before turning her attention back to Ishido. She playfully encouraged her to join in on the fun, expressing her excitement about dancing under the bright moonlight. Ishido giggled and finally agreed, allowing Fayola to pull her out of the room in triumph. As they made their way through the dorms, Fayola spotted Todoroki, and she and Ishido ran ahead to catch up with him. Ishido teased that all it took to get her to go out was a dance, prompting Mineta to jokingly ask if that meant he could take her out too. Ishido quickly dismissed the idea, glaring at him. Fayola sang about being part of the night shift, using animated gestures to illustrate her words to her friends. Monoma pointed out that it didn't sound very silent, but Fayola insisted that the rules could be boring and suggested they break them to have fun. Todoroki rolled his eyes, amused, while Ishido's smile grew wider as the atmosphere became more lively. The once peaceful silence was replaced by a growing noise as more students joined in. Fayola felt a surge of pride at how sneaky she had been in organizing this gathering. Endeavor remarked that her behavior wasn't something to be proud of, to which she replied that it might not be for him. Midoriya, looking nervous, ran alongside Todoroki as Fayola picked up her pace, eager to reach the larger crowd ahead. She encouraged everyone to join in on the fun, singing her catchy tune again as she ran faster, her friends in tow. Uraraka surprised Fayola by encouraging Midoriya to loosen up and dance, catching her off guard. Kaminari joined the growing crowd, exclaiming how awesome the situation was, while Ida expressed his stress about the chaos. Uraraka nudged Ida playfully, urging him to relax, and Ishido chimed in, trying to convince him to have more fun. Siro reminded Ida that he should enjoy himself, but Ida insisted that he only felt at ease when everyone was safe and following the rules. Aizawa, struggling to sleep, was disturbed by the noise outside his door. He noticed the light and heard the laughter and music, realizing it was more than just a few kids sneaking snacks. With a sigh, he got out of bed and headed toward the commotion. As he opened the door, he immediately spotted Fayola, matching her loud voice to her energetic presence. He stopped her, but she used her eyes to signal to the others to keep moving. When he turned her to face him, she looked startled. He scolded her for being up so late, but she tried to persuade him to join in the celebration. Shuji commented on the sadness of celebrating her leaving, and Aizawa retorted about the noise. Joining the fun encouraged everyone to keep the beat going, which distracted Aizawa long enough for Jairu to grab Fayola and make a break for it. Kaminari announced Jairu's entrance, while she playfully told him to be quiet, avoiding eye contact. The night was alive with energy, and the students embraced the excitement of their spontaneous gathering. A tiny bit of pink dusted her cheeks. Jairu sang in a playfully mocking tone as they ran towards Fayola, expressing excitement about not letting anyone sleep and inviting her to party all night. Fayola responded with a wide grin, singing back about dancing together under the bright moon. Fortunately, they hadn't fallen too far behind, ensuring no one would be left waiting. The two of them slid down the massive stair railing, reaching the bottom where they quickly joined Todoroki, Ashido, and the others. The last image shown on screen captured the group running out of the entrance door, which had been previously burst open by the kids ahead of them, their eyes wide and grins massive. They were the main focus of the image, while those who followed appeared more blurred. Tetsu remarked calmly that it was cool. Monoma interjected, suggesting that he could have used more screen time. Bakuga bragged, claiming it was him that people wanted to see. Jiraiya asked if Fayola had gotten caught, to which Fayola replied that she thought she had, as one of her intentions was to annoy the staff. Nizu inquired about his absence, expressing his anticipation to see his human self. The teachers explained that he didn't sleep in the castle, and the other staff members were off to different schools to address earlier chaos, leaving only Aizawa and Midnight on campus. Mineta, disappointed, asked why they hadn't seen Miss Midnight. Mike and Aizawa explained that she was a heavy sleeper, with Midnight nodding in confirmation. Danny, eager to move on, declared it was time for the next universe, not giving anyone a chance to object. Danny clapped their hands as the screen began to load, noting that there wasn't much to this world, just another alternate reality. Kendo stood at the podium in front of the school, addressing the student body over the microphone. She expressed her excitement for a great year, prompting loud cheers from the hundreds of students. Tetsu cheered loudly, drawing a few looks his way. Kendo smiled at him, a faint tint of pink dusting her cheeks, and giggled as she thanked him, her voice carrying a hint of question but genuine warmth. Mineta, attempting to sound macho, hollered for Kendo to talk to him, but those around him stared in disgust, unfazed by his antics. Monoma smacked him on the back of the head, and when he looked up, he made eye contact with Ashido, who smiled and nodded in return. Kirishima remarked on the surprising moment between Shiro and Monoma, with Shiro agreeing. Tetsu commended Monoma for his support, to which Monoma humbly replied that he always looked out for his classmates, especially around Class 1A. Mineta, trying to save face, insisted that he hadn't done anything, prompting eye rolls from everyone around him. Kendo glared in Mineta's direction before rolling her eyes and continuing her speech. She concluded by inviting everyone to her amazing end-of-school party next Saturday to watch the Powerline concert live on pay-per-view. The cheers grew louder as she humbly thanked the crowd before inviting Principal Nizu to take her place on stage. Aizawa approached the podium, and as he stopped in front of the microphone, Nizu excitedly popped out of his scarf. "Thank you, Kendo, and good morning, everyone," Nizu greeted with his cheerful tone. Saya remarked to no one in particular about how Principal Nizu always seemed to be in Aizawa's scarf. Midoriya recalled their final exams, jumping slightly at the memory. Mike chimed in, animatedly gesturing as he shared that Nizu even hung out in Aizawa's scarf while enjoying tea in the staff room. Nizu expressed his fondness for the cozy spot, sharing that every year, students approached him on the last day of school, asking how they could avoid wasting their summer vacation. Hawks, however, doubted anyone would actually ask that. Several students sighed and pretended to yawn as Nizu continued his rambling. Midnight found it rude and Aizawa mimicked the bored students on screen, throwing his head back with a sigh. Midnight shot him a glare, but Aizawa merely smirked in response. Meanwhile, Koji shyly tried to ask Jiraiya about Kendo's party. Uraraka cooed at Koji's bashfulness as he hid his face, prompting Jiraiya to defensively respond to Uraraka's teasing. Koji quietly insisted he didn't like anyone in that way, his face turning bright red. Kaminari, watching from behind the assembly curtains, felt a mix of shock and relief. Kaminari nervously checked on Kirishima, who stood up straight for a moment, turning off his blowtorch and lifting his metal helmet. Kirishima insisted he was doing it all for his friends, flipping his helmet back on to resume his work. Kaminari asked what they were doing, and Bakugo bluntly suggested it was probably something foolish. Kirishima defended their actions, while Kaminari echoed his sentiment. Shiro, holding a camera, complained about the situation, worried about what his dad might think if he found out. He tripped on a wire, landing on the floor with a thud, but quickly slithered back in with Kaminari's help. Kaminari hoped everything would work out as Nizu suggested a science-themed slumber party, which Aizawa resisted the urge to react to. Jairu and Pony admitted they had forgotten Nizu was speaking, and Fayola noted that no one seemed to be listening. Dabi commented in a monotone voice, and suddenly, the lights went out, surprising the teachers on stage. Kaminari donned funky glasses and tousled his hair before giving a thumbs up to his friends, who returned the gesture. Music began booming from the speakers as a large projector screen rose behind Nizu and Aizawa. Aizawa looked confused, while Nizu smiled in anticipation. As an image of Kaminari appeared on the screen, he struck a cool pose with his arms crossed, and the crowd became animated, their boredom replaced with curiosity and excitement. Kirishima laughed at the crowd's reaction from a security camera near the control panel, while Ashido predicted they would be in for a surprise. Video Kaminari began singing, showcasing impressive dance moves as multiple versions of him danced around the screen, skillfully avoiding lasers. Shinso complimented Kaminari, who boasted about his dancing skills, but Ashido playfully challenged him, claiming she had taught him. The students cheered as the performance continued, zooming in on Momo and Jairu. Jairu watched the screen in amazement, twirling one of her earphone jacks, while Momo smirked at her. Hawks checked on Jairu, who seemed to be vibrating in her seat, and Uraraka assured him that it was normal. Kaminari continued to dance and sing from behind the stage, but tripped on a wire, tumbling onto the stage where everyone could see him. This caused the projector to short-circuit, resulting in a white screen as he accidentally tore a hole through it. Kaminari gulped at the gasps from the crowd, but after regaining his balance, he looked up at the hundreds of eyes watching him, his pre-recorded background vocals still playing. The crowd erupted in cheers as they saw him in person. Kirishima grabbed Siro and shook him, laughing in relieved shock before giving Kaminari a thumbs up, encouraging him to continue the show, knowing the crowd was enjoying it. Kaminari glanced between Kirishima and Jairu, who smiled shyly at him before turning her head to avoid eye contact. Momo still had a huge smirk on her face. The girls all squealed at the cute moment on screen while Jairu turned as red as a tomato. She made a weak attempt to stop them, feeling flustered. Kaminari was also blushing but remained oblivious to Jairu's sudden embarrassment as he finally realized the point of his whole performance. He started making his way forward. Kirishima howled at the end, creating some smoke for effect, and proudly declared that he was the best hype man. Todoroki asked Kirishima why he howled, to which Kirishima sheepishly scratched the back of his neck and smiled, admitting he didn't know. As he danced forward, he locked his sight on Jairu. Kaminari paused for the background vocals to shine as he showed off his dancing skills, moonwalking across the edge of the stage with ease. He sang about doing anything to get Jairu to notice him, dropping to the floor as he got closer and closer to her, who was seated in the front. The tension on screen sent chills down Midnight's spine. Both Jairu and Kaminari were panicking internally, repeating, "Oh my God," in their minds. Those who hadn't understood before were now even more interested in how this would turn out. Toga exclaimed how adorable it was, shocking Dabi, while Shigaraki made a bored vomit motion. All Might sighed, acknowledging young love, and Mike agreed, tears forming in his eyes, which concerned All Might. Midoriya marveled at Kaminari's singing voice. Suddenly, Kaminari pulled away from Jairu, returning to his performance, prompting several exclamations of dismay from the crowd. Kaminari continued singing, expressing his determination to prove he had what it took. Kirishima passed Siro a hook and gestured for him to act. Siro nodded and crawled through the smoke to Kaminari, hooking the device onto him before bouncing back to Kirishima, giving him the all's good gesture. Kirishima roughly pulled on the stage rope connected to the hook. Fayola remarked that it might not end well, and Hawks agreed. Kaminari confidently declared it was a piece of cake, but suddenly he was yanked off the ground. Adapting quickly, he used the rope to fly across the hall, causing the crowd to go wild. He sang about standing out, and a girl from the support course asked who that guy was, clearly smitten. Mineta expressed jealousy over the attention Kaminari was receiving from the girls. Kaminari took a basketball from another student, maneuvered himself to fly to the hoop, and dunked it effortlessly. He turned as if heading backstage, but upon closer inspection, he was reaching out to Jairu. She reached out her hand in return, both of them entranced as they watched the screen intently. Just as their hands were about to meet, Kaminari was jerked backward, having run out of rope. The music died as he bumped into Aizawa's chest, who looked unimpressed as he removed his glasses. The crowd gasped. Someone in the audience imitated Kaminari's voice, prompting him to exclaim in disbelief. Jiraiya couldn't help but giggle, while Bakugo cackled. Amidst the shocked crowd, Jiraiya was the only one smiling. Toga commented on her happiness, causing both Jiraiya and Kaminari to blush. Kirishima squeezed Shiro, who he had swung his arm over, while Kaminari looked up at Aizawa, smiling sheepishly, aware he was in trouble. The screen turned black, and Danny remarked that Kaminari was under house arrest for 2 weeks after that. Vlad expressed surprise he wasn't expelled, knowing Aizawa's reputation. Kamakiri muttered something about favoritism, but no one heard. Kaminari asked if he at least got a date with Jiraiya, causing her to jump in shock. She turned red-faced, questioning him. Danny chimed in, saying they were going to have a date-not-date jam session and go to the movies afterward. Kaminari fist-pumped the air, earning a smile from Jiraiya, who thought no one was watching. Kirishima, Ashido, and Shiro reacted with excitement, while Jiraiya sighed, giving in. She told Kaminari they could go to the movies after this, and he was shocked. She confirmed it, slightly annoyed, and he enthusiastically offered to let her pick the movie. Jiraiya smirked, suggesting they watch a horror movie, fully aware of his fear of them. Kaminari's smile remained, but his eyes reflected regret as he gulped. He agreed, trying to sound enthusiastic. Danny, ready to move on, announced the next universe, stating it was also an alternate reality. Fayola noted her hesitation, but Danny brushed it off, saying she was just thinking of something. She introduced the next story, titled Other Side. Dabi began, and as the camera zoomed in on Hawks, he was seen talking to the winged number 2 hero. Tokoyami's feathers puffed out in shock as he questioned what a villain was doing there. Danny explained that was the whole point of what they were watching. Dabi made a persuasive offer to Hawks, who looked confused as Dabi slung an arm over his shoulder and made a scissor motion before walking away. He glanced back to see if Hawks would be intrigued enough to follow him as he walked out. He was. Mike expressed his disbelief at the situation, questioning why Hawks was even considering listening to the villain. Aizawa explained that the alternate realities they had witnessed closely resembled their own experiences. All Might asked Hawks if anything like this had ever happened, to which Hawks shook his head in response, confirming that nothing of the sort had occurred. A few people in the cinema remained suspicious but decided to watch the entire scene unfold. Endeavor wanted to defend Hawks but hesitated, not wanting to raise any suspicions or paranoia about his presence around Hawks. Dabi turned to face Hawks once again, suggesting a trade for something more colorful. He ignited a small blue flame in his hand before quickly extinguishing it, circling around Hawks. He encouraged Hawks to embrace a little craziness, gesturing to his head with a smirk before stepping away. Hawks leaned back, observing the villain with curiosity but remaining unimpressed. Endeavor recalled a similar smile on Tuya's face when he tried to impress his father with his quirk, despite the pain it caused him. That same smile sent shivers down the spines of a few students, appearing almost unhinged. Shigaraki watched the interaction closely, assessing Hawks as they had yet to meet properly. He needed to ensure Dabi wasn't making a grave mistake. Dabi suggested that Hawks could play it safe, mimicking his wings with his hands as an imaginary halo floated above him. He then dropped the innocent act, urging Hawks to take a risk and break free from the mundane role he was expected to play. Hawks avoided eye contact, looking down with a frown as Uraraka voiced her unease about the situation. Dabi suddenly grabbed Hawks' shoulder, startling him. He wrapped an arm around Hawks, gesturing ahead of them as if inviting him to imagine a different path. He stepped back, claiming it would lead to the other side, emphasizing that Hawks could choose to follow his example. Mike interjected, stating that no one would want to emulate Dabi, while Danny countered that the statement was misleading. Dabi smirked, presenting his offer as irresistible, suggesting that Hawks could either remain trapped or finally be free to soar. In a sudden burst, Dabi unleashed azure flames toward Hawks, but the hero deftly avoided them, leaping into the air with his wings spread wide. Dabi watched with satisfaction as Hawks descended gracefully back to the ground, reinforcing the allure of his offer. Shigaraki expressed interest in the idea of the other side, while Shinso dismissed it. Hawks landed firmly in front of Dabi, addressing him with a smirk. He made it clear that he had no intention of accepting Dabi's proposal, turning his back and using his wing to obscure Dabi's view, adding a touch of sass. The heroes exchanged knowing smirks, confident that Hawks would not be easily swayed by Dabi's temptations. Endeavor and Hawks recognized that this alternate reality diverged significantly from their own. In their universe, it was Hawks who approached Dabi, albeit undercover. The circumstances they were witnessing suggested a reality that felt genuine from both perspectives. They hoped this version of Hawks would remain true to his heroic nature. Hawks thanked Dabi but indicated he was content with his current life, stepping back and gesturing toward the door. He shrugged lazily, expressing his enjoyment of the life Dabi claimed he was trapped in. Shigaraki and Spinner reacted with annoyance at his words. Hawks continued, admiring Dabi's showmanship but asserting that he preferred his own lifestyle, flicking away a feather as if it were a mere crumb. Dabi's displeasure deepened as Hawks continued to speak, confidently asserting that he was fine with the role he played. He leapt into the air, showcasing his flying abilities while Dabi looked on with indifference. Hawks performed a front flip before landing in a casual pose, prompting Tokoyami to feel a mix of embarrassment and boredom. Hawks declared that he had everything he needed and had no desire to take Dabi's ride. He stepped closer to Dabi, who stood with crossed arms, unimpressed. Hawks mimicked Dabi's earlier gestures, pushing him away as he continued to assert his independence. He emphasized that he was not trapped in a cage and didn't need to take a key, confidently stating that he was doing just fine. Compress observed that Hawks seemed to be trying to convince himself more than Dabi. Tokoyami disagreed, insisting that Hawks would never agree to become a villain. Komori looked to Hawks for support, and Hawks affirmed his stance while winking at Dabi when no heroes were watching. Dabi nodded, still not fully trusting him. He questioned whether this was really how Hawks preferred to spend his days, surrounded by whiskey and misery. The screen displayed a hardcore bottle of whiskey in a dimly lit room, zooming out to reveal Hawks, looking sad and slightly disheveled, sitting in front of it. The scene shifted to Hawks' phone, lit up with notifications filled with titles criticizing heroes. The other heroes exchanged worried glances, even Endeavor showing concern for him. Hawks remained silent, avoiding their gazes. He understood they weren't naive, lying would be futile given what they already knew. His best option was to stay quiet. Hawks reflected on the potential consequences of being associated with Dabi. He envisioned the headlines that would follow, feeling the weight of the league's silhouettes looming behind him. Dabi acknowledged the chaos that would ensue among heroes and civilians, while Faola contemplated the societal impact. Shigaraki smirked, envisioning the fallout on Japan's fragile trust in heroes. Momo noted that while All Might had restored some faith with his fight against AFO, his absence had left the public feeling more vulnerable. Midnight admitted that Endeavor's rise to the #1 hero wasn't easing anyone's fears. Mike expressed his reluctance to think about it, while Midoriya considered how disastrous a scandal could be. He managed to keep his thoughts to himself, though he was visibly sweating. Uraraka noticed his distress, but before she could act, he focused on the screen again. Hawks took a moment to reassess how badly things could spiral if he were caught by the heroes or anyone who wasn't a villain. He realized he needed to take more precautions to prevent that from happening and to earn the league's trust, ensuring they wouldn't use him as a pawn in their games. Danny felt overwhelmed by the tension in the room, grateful that some of their memories would be erased. Perhaps they could convince the boss to erase this experience as well for everyone's sake. Dabi, with a wide smile, suggested that Hawks could finally live a little and laugh. The shadow surrounding Dabi became more pronounced, adding an unsettling vibe to his presence. Shoto sighed, troubled by his brother's deranged demeanor. Wished he could have a trauma-free life with a normal, happy family. Dabi continued, urging Hawks to break down his walls, while a large silhouette of him loomed behind Hawks, as if manipulating his thoughts. AFO seemed impressed, remarking that it was a deal worth considering. The scene returned to Dabi, who looked at Hawks with anticipation. Hawks, still deep in thought, finally snapped out of it and extended his arm to Dabi, suggesting he would leave the decision up to him. The screen cut to Dabi's waiting hand, creating a tense moment of suspense among the heroes and villains alike. Hawks reached out to shake Dabi's hand in agreement before the screen cut to black. Shock filled the cinema, as the heroes struggled to comprehend another hero turning villain. Bakugo sarcastically remarked about the situation, raising his voice in frustration. Aizawa warned him to calm down, and Bakugo took a deep breath, managing to regain his composure. Vlad suggested it would have been better to see someone less impactful become a villain, which prompted Aizawa to reprimand him for such comments. Danny hoped the next few universes would be less overwhelming. Toga expressed her excitement for the unfolding drama, while Compress agreed, noting that watching heroes fall apart was entertaining. Shigaraki added that it was the best thing that had happened to them so far, prompting AFO to remind them not to spoil the fun. Danny felt her own frustration boiling at AFO's audacity but maintained her composure. All Might told AFO to be quiet, sounding exasperated with the situation. Koda suggested that getting some fresh air might help everyone calm down, while Jiro reminded them to distance themselves from what they saw on screen. Kirishima pointed out the difficulty in doing so when it was literally them being portrayed. Deku acknowledged that they were seeing different sides to people they thought they knew, making it hard to trust their perceptions. Uraraka shared her concerns about the revelations, while Ida reflected on the stain incident, feeling guilt over the truth that only a few knew. Many others in the room contemplated their own hidden truths, feeling uncomfortable with the revelations. Fayola and Danny sensed the weight of the moment but struggled to find the right words to address it. They were just tired teenagers following orders, caught in a situation they never anticipated. She felt a strong sense of responsibility to help the situation due to her moral compass, but she wasn't close enough to anyone to know what to do or say. This was an unfamiliar scenario for her, and she felt lost and uncomfortable. At that moment, everyone found themselves transported to a garden outside. It was a place unfamiliar to them, even Danny, but fortunately, another letter appeared in their hands. The letter expressed regret for the stress caused and acknowledged the current state of mind everyone was in. It didn't promise that things would improve immediately but mentioned an intention to change things up a bit. For now, everyone was encouraged to relax. They could take time to breathe outside, eat, talk, sleep, or do whatever they needed. Cabins were available for resting during this time. The letter concluded with a note that they would resume in 2 days. Danny sighed as she read the letter, feeling grateful. She explained the situation to everyone and allowed them to manage themselves while she went to take a well-deserved nap. They were now at the continuation of Undertale, and excitement filled the air. Shigaraki, Fayola, Monoma, and Jiro cheered in anticipation. Dabi questioned their enthusiasm, wondering why they were so happy. They responded that they were eager to see Flowey confront the hero brat. Bakugo mocked the name, asking if it was the only thing they could think of, but Shigaraki told him to be quiet. Danny clapped her hands, signaling the start of the next segment. As the scene loaded, the bullets circling Shoto suddenly disappeared when Flowey was knocked off screen by a fireball, letting out a shriek. Shigaraki sighed in disappointment, while Denki laughed at the villain's displeasure. Danny commented on how reality is often disappointing, regardless of the universe. Shoto opened his eyes to see a woman approaching him. She appeared to be a hybrid of a goat and several other animals, with kind green eyes and tiny horns atop her head. She expressed concern for Shoto, commenting on the miserable creature torturing such an innocent youth. She turned back to Shoto with a warm smile, introducing herself as Inko, the guardian of the ruins, and knelt down to his level. Midoriya smiled at the screen, recognizing his mother despite her different appearance. Todoroki remarked on how kind she was, while Ida complimented Midoriya, noting where he got his heart of gold. Midoriya thanked them but wondered when he would appear in the story, hoping he would be with her. Inko reached out her hand to Shoto, who hesitantly flinched away. However, after seeing her concerned eyes, he gave in and allowed her to gently place her hand on his head. Aizawa noticed the flinch but said nothing. Inko reassured him, saying he had fallen down into darkness, but he need not worry. She promised to guide him through the maze and teach him the way. She stood and extended her arm, inviting him to take her hand. She continued, expressing that it had been a long time since a human had come by and that he reminded her of a love she once knew. Shoto accepted her hand, rising to his feet. Fayola pondered what that meant, while Inko spoke of the lessons he would learn in life, assuring him that his mother was proud and he would never leave her side. As they walked through the ruins, Inko spoke of the peaceful life they could have together, suggesting that the underground wasn't such a terrible place after all. Midnight commented on the situation, and Mike and Aizawa agreed, noting the oddity of her words. Midoriya felt a pang of sadness for his alternate mother, while Uraraka observed that he was not with her. Hagakure tried to lighten the mood by pointing out how adorable Todoroki looked with Mrs. Midoriya. Inko continued to reassure Shoto, expressing her desire for him to stay with her and learn about determination and strength. The soft music faded as they walked, and Shoto quietly took her hand, ready to face the challenges ahead. Hawks questioned why the screen wasn't fading to black, wondering if the segment was longer than usual. Danny shrugged, uncertain of the answer. This is how the story begins. The crowd exclaimed in excitement, expressing their joy at the unfolding events. Danny was pleasantly surprised by the 2-for-1 special they had just encountered. They wondered if this fallen child would become their friend or if they would succumb to darkness and bring harm. The uncertainty lingered, as they all yearned to soar like angels. Fayola commented on the situation, pointing out that the child was just that, a child. Dabi cautioned against underestimating kids, noting their potential for danger. Shigaraki added that children could be the most formidable adversaries. Kaminari agreed with Fayola, gesturing toward the small child, insisting there was no need to fear them. He believed Todoroki, in particular, could never harm anyone. This reminded Danny of the fight they had witnessed against Chimera, a moment that lingered in their memory. As the monsters sang about their struggles, Aizawa grumbled about their sudden shifts in mood. Kuda's melancholic voice caught Jiru's attention, who expressed concern for her friend's apparent sadness. Kuda acknowledged his sorrow, realizing how it reflected in his song about loss and loneliness. Mina empathized with him, recognizing the source of his sadness. Dabi dismissed Kuda's feelings, prompting Fayola to quietly defend him. She felt an inexplicable aversion toward the abandoned Todoroki, sensing something deeper beneath the surface. The monsters continued their song, expressing their longing for the sky, a stark contrast to their dark surroundings. Midoriya sighed, pondering why they missed something they had not seen in so long. Shinso questioned how they could yearn for the surface after being trapped for so long. Danny explained that monsters aged slower than humans, so many had memories of the surface before their imprisonment. As the song concluded, Inko and Shoto noticed a ghost lying on the ground, pretending to be asleep. Inko seized the moment as a teaching opportunity, encouraging Shoto to engage with the ghost. However, Shoto's initial response was to grab a stick and poke the ghost, much to Inko's dismay. In an unexpected turn, Shoto and Kuda formed a bond after he admired Kuda's hat made from tears and attempted to hug him, prompting coos of delight from the audience. Inko suddenly stopped and looked at Shoto, explaining that the exercise was meant to prepare him for moments when he might be alone. She handed him a cell phone, emphasizing the importance of being able to reach out if they ever got separated. With that, she moved ahead, keeping an eye on him as he navigated the ruins alone. As Shoto explored, he encountered various smaller monsters and discovered a room filled with candy. A mysterious voice echoed around him, instructing him to take only one piece. He complied but, feeling emboldened, reached for another. The voice chastised him for his greed, but Shoto chose to ignore it. Bakugu, watching, felt a chill, recognizing the voice but unable to see its source. Uraraka noted how different Bakugu sounded when calm, while Kaminari speculated about the nature of the voice. Jiru suggested it might be Bakugu's ghost watching over the place he had once inhabited, adding an eerie atmosphere to the scene. Hawks warned Shoto about ignoring the voice, but Shoto shrugged it off, feeling no immediate threat. Aizawa, too tired to engage further, let Shoto continue on his path. Eventually, Shoto reached Inko's house, his stomach growling in anticipation of the pie she had mentioned earlier. Upon entering, the delightful aroma of cinnamon and butterscotch enveloped him. Inko welcomed him with a warm smile, remarking on the coziness of their home. Shoto nodded in agreement, appreciating the comfort it provided. As Inko closed the door, the screen faded to black. Bakugo expressed his impatience, while Shigaraki complained about the lack of excitement in Shoto's journey. Dabi reminded everyone not to get their hopes up, while Danny suggested they move on to the next universe, eager for more engaging content. Minoma felt a bit disappointed but was still curious about the upcoming scenes. Fayola exaggerated her boredom, prompting Danny to prepare for the next adventure. Danny expressed excitement about the new universe, hinting that while it had some heavier themes, it would also include fun elements. With a clap of their hands, Danny signaled the start of their next journey. The loading screen appeared, setting the stage for what was to come. Bright blue light illuminated the screen as Aizawa's dimly lit figure stood there. A female voice began to speak, requesting water. Aizawa proceeded to perform a form of martial arts, showcasing his ability to control water. Ida noted that Aizawa had a different quirk. The background shifted to green as Rock Lock replaced Aizawa, demonstrating martial arts while manipulating a large piece of rock with a powerful kick. Shoto observed a pattern forming. Bakugo squinted at the screen, declaring fire as the screen turned red. Tuya's figure replaced Rocklock, following the others by using martial arts to manipulate flames. Dabi expressed a hint of bitterness, noting that his quirk was similar. Shoto suddenly mentioned elements, causing a few people to look at him in confusion. Midoriya sought clarification, but Fayola interjected, explaining that everyone shown so far had powers related to the elements, suggesting it might be a focal point of their world. Shoto confirmed her statement, while Kaminari excitedly wondered what he could control. The screen shifted to yellow, revealing a wingless hawks. Unlike the others, he danced more than practiced martial arts, stylishly manipulating the air. Bakugo analyzed their movements, noting that they reflected their respective elements. Kaminari asked for clarification, and Bakugo urged him to think. Midoriya explained that while they all appeared to be practicing martial arts, each had a unique style. Uraraka pointed out that Aizawa's moves were fluid like water, while Hawks had a freestyle approach, and Rocklock's style was tough and solid. Danny confirmed their observations, and Bakugo claimed he was always right, prompting an internal sigh from Danny. Midnight whispered to Aizawa, complimenting his student's intelligence, to which he hummed in acknowledgement. Uraraka's voice narrated a story about the old days, a time of peace when the Avatar maintained harmony among the Water Tribes, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, and Air Nomads. Ida recognized the voice, confirming it was Uraraka's. She and Midoriya felt a rush of excitement at being central to the narrative. Endeavor observed that the population was divided by their powers. Uraraka continued the narration, explaining that everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. The screen displayed armies of fire soldiers advancing on their foes. As the flames flickered, the image shifted to an old, thin Toshinori standing on a large rock. He controlled the elements, stating that only the Avatar could master all four and stop the ruthless firebenders. However, when the world needed him most, he vanished, leaving All Might in shock as gasps echoed around the cinema. Shigaraki commented on the typical nature of heroes, while Fayola expressed her mixed emotions, ranging from shock to indifference. Uraraka's voice continued, revealing that 100 years had passed, and the Fire Nation was nearing victory in the war. She recounted how her father and the men of her tribe had journeyed to the Earth Kingdom to fight against the Fire Nation, leaving her and her brother to care for their tribe. The screen showed a young Denki and Ochako embracing as they watched their loved ones depart on ships, Denki holding a small sack of fireflies for light. Jairu remarked on the gender dynamics of the situation, while Kuda expressed sadness. Midoriya empathized with the scene. Kaminari tried to lighten the mood by celebrating his own role as a main character, receiving a congratulatory high five from Kirishima. Uraraka continued, sharing that some believed the Avatar had never been reborn into the Air Nomads, breaking the cycle. However, she still held hope that the Avatar would return to save the world as the screen faded to darkness. Kendo noted that the segment felt more like an introduction than an observation of their lives. Danny explained that they had stitched together parts of Uraraka's narration to provide background before continuing. Momo inquired about the absence of metal as an element, but Danny revealed they couldn't provide that information. The screen lit up again, showing the South Pole, where a boat carried 2 people. Denki patiently watched the water with a spear in hand, focused on a fish. He confidently declared that it wouldn't escape him this time. Ochako, unimpressed, decided to try her own method. Removing one of her warm gloves, she extended her hand and gently motioned, causing a blob of water containing a fish to rise into the air. Ashido excitedly pointed out the similarity between Uraraka's power and her own quirk. Uraraka expressed her delight at being able to control water, while Midoriya deduced that Kaminari shared a similar ability due to their relation. Kaminari mused that he had thought he would be more suited to fire, a sentiment echoed by Kirishima. Uraraka excitedly called out to Denki, eager to show him her catch. Denki, however, urged her to be quiet, claiming he could already smell the fish cooking. Despite her attempts to get his attention, Denki accidentally burst the blob of water with his spear, splashing him. He looked at her in irritation, questioning why he always ended up soaked whenever she played with water. Ochako sighed, expressing her frustration. She mentioned that it wasn't magic but rather waterbending, an ancient art unique to their culture. Denki, attempting to dry himself off, dismissed her explanation, suggesting that if he had unusual powers, he would keep them to himself. Bakugo chimed in, calling Denki's statement a lie, which made Jiro giggle as she covered her mouth, finding it entertaining to watch the siblings bicker. Hawks inquired about waterbending, and Danny nodded in response. Fayola observed that Denki was implying that waterbending was rare and that he couldn't do it. Momo countered that this didn't align with what they had seen so far. Danny agreed, adding that it would likely be explained later, but unfortunately, Denki didn't share the same abilities as his sister. Denki frowned, feeling a bit downcast. Ochako retorted, pointing out that Denki was the one who flexed his muscles at his reflection in the water. Kirishima admitted that this did sound like something Denki would do. Just then, the boat shook, indicating they had hit something. The siblings quickly became alert, noticing that a current was directing them toward large chunks of ice. Denki took charge, using his oar to steer clear of the obstacles. Fayola and Kendo expressed their concern, while Tetsu declared he couldn't look. Ochako panicked, yelling directions for Denki to follow, but the current was too strong, and their boat eventually got crushed. Fortunately, they managed to leap onto an ice chunk just in time. As they looked around, Ochako sarcastically questioned Denki's navigation skills, moving closer to him. Denki shot back, suggesting that if she was unhappy with his steering, she should have used her waterbending to guide them. Aizawa reminded them that this was not the time for arguing. Ochako stood up, questioning if it was her fault, while Denki lamented that he should have left her at home, implying that it was typical for a girl to cause trouble. This remark drew glares from the others, including Ashido and Ida, who were shocked by Denki's words. Bakugo simply stated that it was a bad move, while Kirishima shook his head in disapproval. Denki protested, claiming that was not who he was. All Might defended him slightly, suggesting that his views were shaped by his upbringing, but that didn't excuse his disrespect toward his sister. Danny pointed out that he didn't have siblings, which showed in his behavior. Ochako's anger escalated, causing the water around her to react as she expressed her frustration about doing all the work around camp while Denki played soldier. Denki tried to warn her about the iceberg, but she was too caught up in her emotions to listen. As she continued to vent, she accidentally struck the iceberg with a powerful wave of her hands, causing it to crack. Realizing the chaos she had caused, the iceberg toppled over, creating a wave that swept them away. They clung to their ice block as it drifted. Once they stabilized, Denki remarked that Ochako had gone from weird to freakish. She was incredulous at his comment, and Ashido noted that he was acting more obnoxious than Mineta. Ochako, shocked by the realization that her actions had caused the ice to crack, took a boomerang from Denki's back, determined to help whoever was trapped inside the ice. Denki called out to her, urging her to return, but she ignored him and approached the boy encased in the iceberg. She struck the ice with the boomerang. A beam of light erupted from their location, melting the ice and awakening nearby wildlife. Meanwhile, a ship in the South Pole waters was observing the bright beam. On board was Shoto Todoroki, who clenched his fists as he watched. He expressed his relief at finally witnessing something significant. Hagakure noted Todoroki's appearance, while Shiro pointed out the burn on his face. Momo quickly apologized for any offense, and Todoroki brushed it off, wondering what had happened. Endeavor, impatiently awaiting his son's next appearance, observed the scene closely. Bakugo questioned Todoroki's attire, while Danny speculated it was Fire Nation armor. Shoto turned to an older man behind him, who was sipping tea, asking if he understood the implications of the glowing light. The man, a familiar figure, replied that he wouldn't be able to finish his game. Fayola and Ochako recognized him as Gunhead, and Ochako was surprised by his age, asking how Danny knew him. Danny explained that he was her adoptive father. Is that how he would look without his quirk? She pondered that thought aloud. Uraraka was curious and asked how long it would take. Danny interrupted them, stating they needed to continue their work. Uraraka apologized, and Fayola acknowledged the interruption. Shoto mentioned that his search was about to conclude. Mintano, a name he had created for Gunhead, sighed. Shoto pointed out that the light they saw came from an incredibly powerful source, suggesting it had to be him. Toga huffed, noting that Shoto had assumed the avatar was a boy. Fayola remarked that there was some evidence to support that assumption, but it didn't matter much. Toga responded that she just wanted to point it out. Mintano reminded them that it could just be the celestial lights and advised Shoto not to get too excited over nothing as he continued his game of Pai Sho. Midoriya, with stars in his eyes, exclaimed that Todoroki was a prince. Todoroki replied plainly that it didn't sound fun, leaving Midoriya and others confused. Danny noted it was sad that he felt that way since he was a prince in several universes. Kirishima found it awesome and turned to Bakugo for confirmation, but Bakugo dismissed it. Shoto's uncle offered him calming jasmine tea, but Bakugo roared that he needed to capture the avatar instead. Ashido commented on Bakugo's temper, while Fayola glared at the Shoto on screen, feeling angry at his disrespect toward Gunhead. Mike made a remark about how Shoto reminded him of Endeavor, only to be elbowed by Aizawa. Shoto looked down in shame for a moment but was comforted by Midoriya's warm gaze, which made him feel better. Momo wondered how someone could refuse tea and sadly summoned some for herself. Back at the iceberg, Ochako cuddled into Denki as he held his spear defensively. They both looked up to see a glowing boy with short, bushy hair climbing out. Denki warned him to stop, but the boy didn't seem to hear. He stood tall on the iceberg, exuding an intimidating aura. After a moment, his tattoos and eyes stopped glowing and he fainted. Ochako gasped and rushed to catch him, only to be distracted by Denki poking the boy's head with the non-lethal end of his spear. Aizawa was unimpressed, while All Might chuckled. Ochako ordered Denki to stop and gently laid the boy onto the snow. His eyes twitched as he began to wake up, and the first thing he saw was Ochako looking at him with concern, her hood up against the cold. He hoarsely asked if he could ask her something, and she tilted her head in curiosity. He instructed her to come closer and then, with a sudden spark of life in his eyes, asked if she would go penguin sledding with him. Ochako was taken aback by the sudden mood shift, and Dabi commented on it. Uraraka giggled slightly while Midoriya shook his head in embarrassment. She accepted the invitation, and the boy gracefully lifted himself up with the assistance of airbending, which startled Denki. Denki questioned what was happening and asked how the boy had gotten trapped in the ice and why he wasn't frozen. The boy replied that he wasn't sure, moving the spear away from him. A roar alerted him to another presence, and he clumsily climbed up the ice to slide down the other side, giving a large creature a big hug. He called out to Kuda, asking if he was all right and trying to wake him up by opening one of his eyes. Koji, the boy, expressed surprise at being called an animal. Tokoyami joked about it, and Koji quickly clarified that he didn't mean it that way. The boy continued his attempts to wake up the bison, much to the surprise of the siblings who had come around to check on him. Kuda finally woke up and playfully scooped the boy up with his long tongue, causing him to laugh and hug the bison. Denki questioned what the creature was, extending his arm protectively. The boy introduced Kuda as his flying bison, and Denki sarcastically introduced Ochako as his flying sister. At that moment, Kuda sneezed, and while the boy dodged it, Denki was not as fortunate, groaning as he tried to wipe away the snot covering him. Ochako smiled at the scene. Denki sighed in frustration, while Jairu tried to suppress her laughter. The boy reassured Denki that it would wash out, but Denki stared at the mucus on his hand and face, and Ochako looked like she might be sick. The boy then asked if they lived around there, but Denki warned against answering, suggesting that the boy might be trying to signal the fire navy. Aizawa agreed that caution was wise. Ochako sarcastically remarked that the boy had an evil look in his eye, and they all turned to see him giving them a goofy smile. She introduced Denki as her paranoid brother and noted that he hadn't shared his name yet. The boy attempted to say his name but sneezed, blasting into the air and creating a gust of wind that forced his new friends to shield themselves. As he slid down the ice and wobbled to his feet, he cleared his nose and declared his name was Izuku. Denki pointed out that he had just sneezed and flown 10 feet in the air, to which Izuku replied that it felt higher. Fayola expressed her surprise, and Ochako realized he was an airbender. Izuku confirmed this, and Denki, overwhelmed by the strange occurrences, declared he was going home to where things made sense. However, he quickly realized they were stuck. Bakugo remarked on Denki's sarcasm, and Aizawa expressed a preference for Izuku over Kaminari. Kaminari incredulously questioned Aizawa, and Izuku offered to give him and Kuda lift since they were stuck. He then jumped onto the bison's head and onto its back. Ochako excitedly accepted and ran to hop onto Kuda. Denki declined, expressing his reluctance to ride the fluffy creature. He apologized to Koji, who nodded in understanding. Ochako teased Denki about hoping for another kind of monster to give him a ride home before he froze. Denki shot her a glare, while Uraraka also apologized to Koji, who responded with a shy nod and blush. Left speechless, Denki sighed and reluctantly climbed onto the bison. Izuku smiled at Uraraka's excitement. She pouted, wishing she could ride a flying bison too. Jairu pointed out Denki's grumpy expression on screen, and the excitement built as they awaited Kuda's flight. Kuda made a show of jumping into the air, only to land in the water and begin walking, eliciting disappointed reactions from the audience. Izuku tried to encourage Kuda to fly, but it was to no avail. Saka commented in a monotone voice about the situation. Izuku reassured everyone that Kuda was just tired and would soon be soaring through the sky. Ochako looked around, then back at Izuku's wide eyes, asking why he was smiling at her. Denki groaned at their interaction. Ashido cooed, causing Uraraka and Izuku to blush, while their classmates giggled. Bakugo dismissed them as idiots, while Danny gushed about the adorableness of the moment, leaving Bakugo and Shigaraki groaning, and Toga feeling a mix of jealousy and exclusion. The scene shifted to the Fire Nation ship where Prince Shoto stood in a cloak, observing their course. Mentano approached, suggesting that Shoto needed some rest, reminding him of the failures of their ancestors in finding the Avatar. Dabi bitterly commented on their family's history of failures, while Twice expressed a desire for waffles. Endeavor sighed, looking down. Shoto insisted that his honor depended on capturing the Avatar, declaring that the era of hiding was over. The screen returned to Izuku and his friends still riding on Kuda. Toga wondered about Shoto's demeanor, and Ochako greeted Izuku, asking what he was thinking about. She inquired if he had any idea what happened to the Avatar, to which he admitted he didn't know him personally but had known people who did. Bakugo questioned why Izuku was lying, prompting Aizawa to warn him about his language. Ida sighed, and Danny assured them that their questions would soon be answered. Ochako, feeling curious, wished everyone good night before preparing to rest. Izuku, feeling guilty for lying to his new friend, made a sad face. The light on screen changed to show Izuku peacefully sleeping on Kuda, only to be abruptly awakened by a storm. Vlad expressed concern about the others, while Kodai suggested it was a dream. The strong winds and lightning caused Izuku to lose control of Kuda, leading to their crash into the water. As they sank, Izuku's eyes and tattoos glowed white, encasing himself and Kuda in a large ice sphere before the dream ended, with Ochako pulling him from his unpleasant slumber. Fayola speculated about it being a flashback, and Uraraka realized how he ended up in that state. Kaminari noted how intimidating Midoriya looked, while Aizawa added that he was also powerful. Danny explained that Midoriya's glowing eyes indicated he was in the avatar state, allowing him to access immense power. Izuku, now in the village, was encouraged by Ochako to get ready to meet everyone. He donned his robes, and Ochako admired the tattoos that decorated his arms and back. Ashido slyly commented on his appearance, prompting Uraraka to defend herself. Siro wondered how he wasn't freezing, and Danny clarified it was an airbender thing. She excitedly pulled Izuku out to meet the village, introducing him to everyone. Izuku respectfully bowed, surprised when some villagers stepped back in fear. He remarked on how strange it was to hear Uraraka say his real name, and she agreed, shivering at the thought of saying Bakugu's name. Denki approached and snatched the staff from Izuku's hands, questioning its purpose. Izuku explained it was for airbending, demonstrating how it worked by tapping it on the floor, causing wings to spring out and surprising Denki. The village children were fascinated by his contraption, cheering for him to perform the trick again. Izuku clarified that it was airbending, allowing him to control air currents and fly. Denki skeptically pointed out that humans couldn't fly, to which Izuku confidently replied that he could, positioning himself to use his glider before leaping into the air. He expertly flew around the villagers, performing tricks with a smile on his face, while they watched in awe. Izuku got distracted and ended up colliding with an unsightly building. Denki gasped as he rushed to his damaged structure, while Ochako helped Izuku up from the ground, complimenting him as Denki found himself buried in snow. Denki complained about their antics, expressing his frustration. Izuku was surprised to learn that Ochako had waterbending abilities, albeit still developing. Gran interrupted, reminding Ochako that she had chores to attend to. Ochako insisted that Izuku was the real deal, a bender who could teach her. Gran cautioned her not to place all her hopes in him, but Ochako felt strongly that he was special. As she turned to point out Izuku's wisdom, she found him with his tongue stuck to his glider, prompting laughter from the children surrounding him. Midoriya commented on the situation, and Minoma added his own sarcastic remark. Meanwhile, Prince Shoto was in the midst of training, following Mentano's instructions as guards attempted to attack him. He skillfully dodged and countered, but Mentano expressed his frustration, emphasizing that true power in firebending came from breath, not muscle. Shoto, eager to learn more, demanded to move on to advanced techniques, but Mentano insisted he needed to master the basics first. In a moment of frustration, Shoto unleashed a fire kick, causing one of the guards to stumble back. Turning to his uncle, Shoto expressed his determination to be more powerful, believing he would need advanced skills to face the Avatar, who he thought must be over a century old. Fayola commented on Shoto's attitude, while others noted the similarities between him and Bakugu. They all pondered how Shoto expected to fight someone so experienced. Fo interjected with a playful remark about his own age, which prompted a warning from Shigaraki. Danny rolled their eyes at the exchange. Fayola smiled at Shoji's compliment, feeling shy as she looked away. A mentor addressed the young boys, instilling in them the importance of courage when facing a firebender. However, the boys seemed distracted, with one raising his hand to express a pressing need. The mentor insisted they hold off until their fathers returned from war, but the children's pleas were hard to ignore. Denki sighed as he faced the reality of their youth, while Kirishima was surprised by their adorableness. Ochako approached Denki to ask if he had seen Izuku, who had disappeared over an hour ago. Denki shrugged, and just then, Izuku returned, having come from what could be assumed was the bathroom, sharing a humorous comment about the cold. Denki, frustrated, tried to refocus the group on their training, but Izuku's playful interactions with the children distracted him. Ochako giggled at the scene, but Denki insisted they needed to take their training seriously, especially with the looming war. Izuku, curious, asked about the war, which led to a moment of confusion. Suddenly, Izuku spotted penguins and dashed off to catch one, impressing his classmates with his speed. All Might noted how much more youthful this version of Midoriya seemed, and Danny explained that he had just turned 13 before being frozen. Ochako chased after Izuku, finding him trying to play with the penguins. He joked about his connection with animals, and she proposed a deal. If he helped her catch a penguin, she would teach him waterbending. Izuku happily agreed but pointed out that he was an airbender, not a waterbender. Ochako revealed that she was the only waterbender in the South Pole, which made her feel lonely. Izuku suggested they could travel to the North Pole, where another water tribe might have benders who could teach her. Though hesitant about leaving home, Ochako smiled at the prospect of adventure. In the meantime, she decided to teach Izuku the art of catching penguins, demonstrating the technique by throwing a fish, which drew the penguin's attention. He happily surrendered to them. Kendo asked if those were penguins. Danny explained that many animals in this universe are hybrids, and those penguins are a mix of penguins and otters. Kendo raised several questions about how the names of these animals were determined, why they were the same as names from their world, and why they didn't sound foreign. Danny admitted that she was never good at life sciences. Eventually, the two of them could be seen racing on sleds atop the penguins. They soared through the air and made sharp dips against the slopes, enjoying every moment. Ochako recalled that she hadn't done this since she was a child. Izuku reminded her that she still was a child. They skillfully slid through icy tunnels and stopped once they reached the other side. The penguins happily trotted away, finally free. Izuku spotted a massive ship trapped in ice and wondered what it was. Ochako informed him that it was a Fire Navy ship and a painful memory for her people. As Izuku ventured into the large ship, Ochako hesitated, fearing it might be booby-trapped. He encouraged her by saying that to be a bender, one must let go of fear, successfully convincing her to join him inside. Denki expressed his concern that this could only end badly, and Jairu agreed. Monoma remarked on Class 1A looking for trouble again, but someone from Class 1B told him it wasn't the time. Aizawa sighed, referring to them as problem children. The two made their way into the ship through an opening caused by a stalactite. They explored the eerie ship for a while before entering a room filled with Fire Nation weaponry. Ochako shared that this ship had haunted her tribe since her grandmother was a little girl, as it was part of the Fire Nation's first attack. Izuku looked around, feeling worry and confusion. He noted that he had friends all over the world, even in the Fire Nation, and had never seen any war. Danny remarked that this was the moment he would learn about the events of the past century. Izuku felt a twinge of jealousy at the thought of how many friends he had. Ochako then asked how long he had been trapped in the iceberg. He guessed a few days, but she suggested it was more like 100 years. He found that impossible, questioning if he looked like a 113-year-old man. She urged him to think about it, explaining that the war was a century old, and he had somehow been in the iceberg that entire time. His expression shifted from sadness to disbelief as he took a few steps back and sat on the floor, grappling with the reality of 100 years lost. Ochako tried to comfort him, suggesting there might be a bright side to this revelation. All Might expressed his sympathy for Izuku. Izuku acknowledged that he had gotten to meet All Might, which made Ochako smile. Siro commented on his smoothness, and they decided to leave the weapons room. While Izuku continued to explore, Ochako wanted to return, feeling uneasy about the ship. Unfortunately, they were locked in when Izuku accidentally triggered a booby trap. He jokingly asked about what she had said regarding booby traps. The trap activated a chain reaction that sent a distress flare shooting into the sky. Izuku urged Ochako to hold on tight as he lifted her into his arms and jumped out of the opening above them. Shoto observed them descending from the ship through his binoculars, commenting on Izuku's agility despite his age. He instructed someone to wake his uncle, revealing that he had found the avatar and was tracking their path toward a water village, as well as his hiding place. The screen faded to black with the words, "To be continued," appearing in white. Shigaraki realized that Izuku was the villain in this scenario. Danny disagreed, suggesting he wasn't a villain per se. Compress reasoned that since he was against the good guys, he must be a villain. Danny gave up on the argument, noting that Class 1A hadn't realized this until Shigaraki pointed it out. They had grown numb to the situation, and since he hadn't done anything too terrible yet, there was at least that. Danny acknowledged that it had been a long chapter but emphasized the need to keep moving. After receiving several nods of agreement, she prepared to transition to the next universe.